This is a loaded Tuesday because we have kind of all sports to discuss. You've got the fact that the Pacers last night in Utah, I don't know that game was as much about how it ended with Indiana pulling one out as much as how it began with Miles Turner not in the lineup.
Ankle/foot injury.
Fuel the speculation. Trade deadline, Miles Turner linked to the Lakers. Miles Turner not on the floor. Or it could just be that they realized they have 4 games away from home and thought this might be the best one to get him some rest. But we'll get into what happened last night in Salt Lake City. Indiana and Purdue in action tonight. Indiana is in Wisconsin. That will be after Purdue is in Iowa. Both those games on Peacock. And the Colts, there are not one but 2 different players that now apparently are on the NFL LinkedIn that I think to myself, maybe the Colts should swipe on that and give it a look. Eddie looks confused by my vernacular.
I didn't know you were swiping on LinkedIn. I
well,
thought you were
LinkedIn's
swiping
Tinder
on...
for business people.
Okay, I was about to say, I thought
That's
you
all
swiped
it is.
on Tinder.
Everybody says LinkedIn's like, well, it's about growing my brand. No, it's so that you want other companies to see, that you're out there, right? That's what it is. And we can get into that as well. And I was a little bit confused last week when I saw the news that Tim Cindric, the longtime president of Penske Racing, was stepping down, but yet still was overseeing the IndyCar side of and the historical archives from Penske Racing. And I wasn't sure exactly what that meant. I wasn't sure what it meant. For those that are unfamiliar, Tim Cindric is essentially the Bill Belichick of Team Penske. In terms of the Patriots dynasty and the Team Penske dynasty. He's overseen, 10 Indianapolis 500 wins. And so I reached out to Cindric and said, hey, can you come on and explain the change here in terms of your job title? And he said, sure. I'm going to be driving, but how about 12:15? I said, okay, so he's going to call us here in about 10 minutes. And we will get into that, and I presume talk a little Pacers leading into that as well. But I want to begin with this. It is the elephant in the room. It was the elephant in the room yesterday, and unfortunately, there was room in the corner for the elephant because this show, which I have obviously enjoyed doing, Query and Company with Eddie Garrison as the CEO of the company, and as we always say, you folks, each and every one of you, are the members of the company. The president of the company, Jimmy Cook, and it is fun, obviously, to put together this show and to do it each and every day and to do so under this little fictional company that we created. But the reality is that we do work for a company, and that company, like most, is one that is consistently trying to stay ahead of, an uncertain economy, an uncertain industry. I think that goes without saying. You could go back many, many years ago, no matter what industry you're talking about, and any major business that has outlets across the country is always trying to forecast and stay ahead of the ups and downs of just income and outgo and everything else. And this industry under which we work is obviously one that we are big believers in and feel good about the long-term stability and health of it in a constantly changing media world. But that constantly changing media world, in order to maintain that health, means that obviously there are tweaks that are changes that were made along the way. And I think we all know going into it, I don't want to speak for Jimmy Cook, but I think that we all know going into it that there's always the possibility of those changes. Certainly I have become accustomed to that. And yesterday we learned that, unfortunately, there were members of our company here locally, not necessarily to the same level as nationally speaking, but we lost, not literally in life, but in teamwork, we lost some coworkers yesterday. And that includes Jimmy Cook. And we knew that just before we went on yesterday. Jimmy was in here and spoke with Eddie and I just before he left. He was a true champion and a true professional and adult about the situation and understanding it. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's easy for Jimmy. It doesn't mean that it's easy for Eddie. And it doesn't mean that it's easy for myself or for you, the listeners, who have grown accustomed to hearing Jimmy's voice on this program, I will simply say that Jimmy was absolutely a coveted and valued coworker and remains, obviously, a very good friend to all of those that listen to him and to Eddie and myself as well. And we will certainly miss having him in terms of the camaraderies and the contribution that he made to this show from the very time that I started on it. And obviously, he a valuable employee here in a Swiss Army role, because Jimmy was able to do a number of different roles, whether it be producer, whether it be filling in as a co-host, whether it be then working as a co-host, all of the capacities. He handled them with the utmost professionalism, optimism, and just overall outgoing good nature about him. He will stay within the community. Of course, he and his wife, Haley, now are parents to Chance, and they will stay here in Indianapolis. Jimmy will continue to do his broadcast for Roncalli, which I know is very important to him, to doing Roncalli, really all sports for Roncalli. And he, within this building, is in the highest of standings and thought. So hopefully, down the road, one never knows. There could be situations where his name does pop back in and out of the building as those situations arise. But as of right now, that is where things stand, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that Jimmy, without question, is still as highly thought of within this radio show and certainly within this company as he was a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and that remains unchanged. And so we certainly wish him the best, and hopefully we'll continue to cross paths with him and see him down the road in what is undoubtedly an extremely bright future, as I told him. At his age, to have accomplished already what he has, I think it is nothing but a wide-open path for him moving forward. Those things aren't always easy to see in the moment, but certainly hope that the windshield eventually clears out for him where he is able to see that he's got to put the visor and the sunglasses on, because the road ahead for him is very bright. For Eddie and I, we will talk about the Pacers last night. Eddie, you seem to think when it comes to the trade deadline in 2 days, there is so much conversation and speculation about Miles Turner, and that is only going to be accelerated whenever, and I think that it's more like tongue-in-cheek. But when you have the trade deadline and you have a guy like Miles Turner that is so rumored, especially with the Lakers now in need of a rim-protecting big, and then all of a sudden, because doesn't that usually happen, right, where right when on the day, more often than not, on the day of the trade deadline, when a guy's not suited up and people are like, wait a minute, where is he? And then you find out, well, it's because he's actually taking a different flight out of here. I don't think that's the case with Miles Turner, but it makes it fun, right?
It certainly does, Jake. And I think this is a injury for Turner where he could miss tonight as well. It's not a long-term thing. It could be just a couple games. He could be back tonight. He could be back in L.A. against either the Clippers or the Lakers. And I know it's fun to speculate, put the tinfoiled hat on from time to time and wonder if, is Miles Turner going to get traded to the Lakers? But I don't envision Miles Turner getting traded to the Lakers, Jake. I think he means too much to this team, and I think you saw that last night through the first 3.5 quarters of the game. Thomas Bryant just could not stay on the floor. He didn't give them productive minutes, and then he comes back in the fourth quarter. He has a dunk, and then he has a three-point play. He has a block that leads to a basket for Indiana, and he had a sequence there where he really impacted the game and provided a spark for the Pacers when they needed it.
Here's the thing, though. When I was watching that game last night, I was thinking to myself, okay, let's just say hypothetically that Miles Turner is a player that, in fact, and I don't believe this to be the case, so maybe I'm being hypocritical by even talking out of both sides of my mouth, which would be a real skill if I could do that. But if you were to believe that Miles Turner is a player that the Pacers could move on from, I want to make very, very clear here. The only way that the Pacers would move on from Miles Turner, in my opinion, is one of two things. I can tell you that the Pacers' philosophy, and I think the philosophy of basically any sports franchise that you talk with, but when it comes to the Pacers, their philosophy when it comes to trades has always been you are always open to a trade that makes your team better, even if it's one that you don't anticipate. If somebody comes to you with a proposal of something that makes your team better, you look at it and go, well, wait a minute, let me look at this. So I'm not saying that the Pacers would be opposed to a trade for Miles Turner if it was something that emphatically and very clearly made their team better. But I don't think that they are seeking to trade him. Unless, the only way I think the Pacers seek it out is if Miles Turner goes to them and says, you know, guys, I've been thinking about it. And I love Indy. I love it. I love it with all my heart. But, you know, the thing I loved the most about Indy was that sugar factory place, and it closed. So I just don't know that there's the reason I want to stick around here. And so, therefore, I don't think I'm going to re-sign. No matter how much you offer me, I think I'm going to take my talents elsewhere. Now, number one, that ain't going to happen. But number two, if it did, then the Pacers they find themselves in the position of the Paul George situation where they're like, okay, if we know that this guy is getting ready to enter into free agency and he has already politely and professionally informed us that he is going to move on, then it's in our best interest to go ahead, find the team where he would like to go, or find a team that's even willing to take him on without a guarantee that they'll be able to re-sign him so that we can have him leave so that we get something in return as opposed to nothing. That would be scenario A where they would trade him if he, in fact, tells them emphatically that he is not going to resign here. And the other would be if somebody comes and makes an offer to them that completely blows them away. Now, the Lakers might have interest in Miles Turner, but I don't think that there's anybody on that roster other than Luka Doncic and LeBron James that would blow Indiana away. I know there's reports that, like, Austin Reeves is a guy. Come on. He's a nice player, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that he is a guy that you look at and say, that makes us a better team. And so for those reasons, I just don't think that this is a on-the-forefront conversation that is taking place. And then I watched last night. I was thinking about all that, and then I watched last night. And as I was watching, I'm watching Thomas Bryant, and he is a good player. Thomas Bryant is a good player, but he is the proverbial donut tire when it comes to the center position. And what I mean by that is he's perfect. Perfect in little stints, right? Hey, our center's in foul trouble. Our center, needs a night off, whatever. We can put him in here and there. But if he is a guy that you are looking to rely upon for the long term of a game or the long term of a season, you can see, like your donut tire that you put on your car when you have a flat, it is perfectly sufficient to get you through to work the next day or to get you a couple of exits down the road on the interstate. But if you start trying to drive that with your as a primary tire, you ain't going to go very far, and you're not going to go over 55 miles an hour. And I think Thomas Bryant is a wonderful talent. And I think for what he was acquired to be for Indiana, he is really sufficient, if not beyond sufficient. Very good. He hits threes. He's a high-energy guy. He gets you rebounds. He knows his role. He's a great teammate by all accounts. I'm not in the locker room, but I'm going by what I hear, that he's a great teammate that knows his role and accepts it. Those are all wonderful things. But as you saw last night, the longer he's out there, the more his liabilities start to show. And combined with the fact that when Bryant, and there were a couple times last night where, I don't know if you noticed this, Eddie, he's a touchy individual. Right? Emotional, yes. His emotion sometimes.
Fiery.
Fiery is a very good way of saying it. Very good way of saying it. Thomas Bryant last night showed that at times you've got to take him out and let him cool down a little bit. And the problem is, if you were to trade Turner, for example, there's no backup there. There's just not a backup there. But we'll continue that conversation about what happened last night. But as I had mentioned, joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, switching lanes literally and figuratively, Tim Cendrick joins us from Team Penske. And I'm just going to get – Tim and I know each other, casually over the course of racing for the last 20 years or so. And he knows one thing about me, and that is that we share a common love for Guns N' Roses. So he knows that I'm not a Rhodes Scholar. I didn't go to Rose-Hulman like Tim. I'm not an engineering mind like Tim. I'm not a genius like Tim Cendrick. So therefore, Tim, I need you to explain this, and I appreciate you joining us today. I saw the headline that you are stepping back from your role as the president of Team Penske, and then I looked at what your new assignments were, and I thought that looks like the role of a president. So I was confused by exactly what all of this meant and was hoping, and I appreciate your time today, that you could illuminate me here on the change in your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, number one, I don't have a LinkedIn profile. That's beyond my comprehension. I haven't figured that world out yet, but maybe there'll be a time. Anyway, good morning to you, and I guess it's afternoon. But anyway, yeah, for me, I think I started obviously in the IndyCar world as a kid, and my father was involved in it, throughout my childhood and really throughout his life, and that's kind of where I started with Roger. Obviously, after working for Bobby for 7 or 8 years, Bobby Rahal, and through that process, the first probably 4 or 5 years, that's what I did. I managed the IndyCar team. And then, we started up a sports car team at the end of 2005 with Porsche, which was really cool because it was the first time I really could build a team from zero to really what it became in terms of the Spider program and American Le Mans Series at that point in time. And at the end of 2005, Roger said to me, hey, I want to combine all of our racing entities and put them all in Mooresville, North Carolina, in this big new building I bought. And I want you to run it all, and I want you to take over the NASCAR team, and you'll have the sports cars and the Indy cars as well. I'm like, Roger, I kind of like what I'm doing right in that world, and I'd like to try and figure out how we can put it all together. So I took on that task and really been doing that really since 2005, and I really haven't had any other time to do anything else in life. My kids were probably, 5, 8 years old when all that happened. And they kind of grew up, I guess, seeing me at the racetracks. And I guess I just felt like the team was in a really, really good place. And I knew this wasn't something that I wanted to do at this level for the rest of my life. And felt like, there's going to be a time when I need some time to myself. And that's kind of where we are today.
So your day-to-day, Tim Cindric, responsibilities, if you will, I'll just throw a number out there, or, a date out there. Let's say September 10th. This coming September 10th, your job and your day-to-day responsibilities will be different than September 10th of a year ago because you will not be doing what exactly? Because I know that you are still doing, like, the IndyCar side of things. So which things are you taking off the plate?
Yeah, there you go. So I needed the flexibility to be able to, do something different. And in the IndyCar world, my title has always been president of the IndyCar team. But there's this overlying thing of Team Penske and all things racing and Team Penske. And that's really what I'm relinquishing is all things Team Penske and just doing the IndyCar side of life. The conversation I had with Roger, when we said, hey, what would you like to continue doing? And I said, look, I can continue doing the IndyCar thing, business as usual. It'll give me the flexibility I need due to the schedule. He asked me, hey, will you continue looking after, my racing collection and the cars and the archives and the directing the traffic for the museums and, things like Goodwood and Amelia Island and all those type of things. And I said, yeah, I have a passion for that. I can continue to do those things. But when September comes around, I won't be going to the racetrack to the same degree. The day-to-day of the NASCAR and the sports car program will no longer be under my, I guess, watch, if you want to call it that. And that's basically the simplest way to put it.
Is part of that, Tim Cindric is our guest from Team Penske on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Was there, was it challenging overseeing also the NASCAR side with your son being a driver in it and having to kind of separate father-son from president, driver, et cetera?
Absolutely. And he's probably a better one to answer that question relative to how that interaction is. But number one, I never wanted Austin to be a race car driver. We never wanted either of our kids to be a race car driver. So I wasn't the father pushing him to do this. And, it was just, you look back at it and you wonder how did it get to where it was, and people have their own ideas of how that evolves, but he was simply that determined, and as parents, those that know hey, the best thing that you can do for your kids is support them in whatever way they want to, as long as they have a passion for something, as long as they want to put the work into it. And, you want them to achieve their dreams in whatever way. And, I sat down with him in high school and said, look, you either got to get some factory support to go racing or somebody else's support. But I've seen, too many people sit there and try and live their life through their kids. And that's not really what I want to do. And, I'll give him the credit. He figured out how to get where he is. And yeah, you open the doors for him or whatever else. And I've always told him, hey, don't apologize for an opportunity. Only apologize when you don't take advantage of it. And I've had a hands-off approach to whatever degree that I can with him, throughout my time together with him, within the Penske world. I've never done his contracts. I've never been the one to talk to him directly about much of anything aside from a father or giving whatever advice. I have him do that through other people.
Tim, when you look back in the last couple of years, I think it was my years run together, right? But I believe it was a year ago when there was the indiscretion after St. Pete with the push to pass with Team Penske. And obviously it was a huge story because Roger Penske, owning the series, was not shy in then issuing the penalty towards the team and for yourself having to sit out for the month of May. How difficult a time was that for you, and how much did that factor into this decision in totality?
Number one, it wasn't a factor. No, it wasn't a factor relative to this. But as far as difficult times, you're running a team that represents him and all the rest of it, and people are gonna want to believe whatever they want to believe relative to that. But for me, I'll always know that what I've said about it is how it all went down. And for me personally, I didn't know any more about it than when we sat there in Long Beach and it worked when it wasn't supposed to work. So, for me, I understand, as the leader of that organization, you have to take accountability, and didn't really fight that. But no, relative to that decision, that didn't play a role.
So you will, for the upcoming year, Tim Cindric joining us here on the program, you will still be working pit road for IndyCar races, presumably with Joseph Newgarden's team, correct?
Yeah, I don't think you'll really see anything different this year to last year, relative to how the IndyCar process works or how I interact relative to our IndyCar team.
More likely to three-peat, the Kansas City Chiefs or Joseph Newgarden?
Well, that's tough. I think there's a great analogy there because it hasn't been done in either case, right?
Correct.
So,
yeah, you're right.
The fact that the Chiefs have got it to right to the Super Bowl and got to that point, we haven't even qualified for the race yet. So I think the odds for the Chiefs are pretty good, but I wouldn't bet against Newgarden there. He's going to be, pretty relaxed relative to prior years, knowing that he's already been there, done that, and anything else is really icing on the cake for him.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have made it through the final round of pit stops here, right? And now it's just a matter of keeping it clean for them, I guess, right?
They're sitting there first or second, going through the last stint. Like I said, we haven't even qualified for the race yet.
Tim, are you relieved? I mean, you sound like, and I'm not saying that you don't love what you do, but with everything that was on your plate, and maybe you were starting to feel a little bit full, do you feel like you just unbuttoned the top button on the pants for a little bit and you can just kind of relax a little bit?
Well, I think anybody that knows Roger and has been around, us to a certain degree in the relationship that he and I have, I think just breaking the ice and having the initial conversation with him was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And, as far as, I look forward to the future and what it brings. I don't have any plans different than before. There really wasn't anywhere for me to go relative to, what I was already doing. The ceiling was right there. The next step is to own your own team or be, completely independent, and that's not something I've ever really desired to do in sports. But I am interested in other things. I have no plans. I haven't talked to anybody, which Roger, I think initially maybe thought the worst, and I said, look, I've talked to my wife about this decision and nobody else, and that there's nobody prodding me along or trying to entice me to do something different. It's just, I feel like I've had the opportunity to accomplish so much in motorsports and see so much and really be around so many good people that I'm not sure what else there is left to do, really. So, you're only here once, I guess, and I'm fortunate to be, relatively young and have a bit of runway. And with that, I felt like it's the right thing to do for me personally and for those, around me. So
once you broke that
that
ice, how was he? How was Roger Penske with it?
Well, I think initially, like others, the initial reaction sometimes like this is hey, there's a hidden agenda or there's some other thing that's driving this, and there's not. There honestly is nothing else behind it. It is what it is, and he said, well, if that's the case, how about we come up to Detroit and let's sit down and talk about it, and sit down and talk about where you want to go in life, and I did that. I went up there a week later, and we sat down, just him and I. He said, hey, it's just gonna be me and you. Let's have a conversation. I probably had to, Roger, it's always hard to get his time, in terms of a focused conversation. We sat down for a few hours and just talked through everything. And he said, basically, what is it that you enjoy doing, and what is it that would give you the flexibility to do whatever else, to give you the time to do whatever else you want to do. And that's where we landed, and that's where we are.
Okay, lastly, Tim, this is the most important question of all. So, Tim Cindric, I know you're still a busy guy, so and it might take you a second to think on this one because this is deep, heavy stuff here. I need to know, in your opinion, Guns N' Roses' greatest song.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think for me, it depends on what mood I'm in.
Your current mood.
Current moods, man, I don't know. I don't know what that would be. I'd have to give it a little thought. But Estranged has always been a song that you can read into pretty far. So I've kind of always liked the words to that and kind of how that all plays out. But no, I think if you look at it in totality, the Appetite album I can put on at any time and never skip a song. So for me that's a definite go-to, just the entire album, to be honest.
I think we might have to do the rest of the show, Eddie. Nothing but Appetite. We can mix in a strange. I thought Coma might have been one you went with there for a split second, but either way, you can't go wrong, right? Can't go wrong.
Yeah. No, it's Coma's a little tough for me, only because it's after the original band, so I struggle a little bit with that. But yeah, good song. We definitely got to be in the right mood for that one. But yeah, like I said, for me, I look almost at the whole Appetite album as one song. That's kind of how I look at that era.
I guess it's kind of like asking you which was best: 2001, 2002, 2003, 2006, 2009, 2015, 2018, 2019, 2023, or 2024 at the Indy 500. All of them have their attributes, right?
That was easier, man. 01, the first. 01, man. My father tried to win that race with one of his engines for 30-some years and never did. And, just checking that box for me at that point in time, and I told Roger, I said, anything else I do in motorsports is just a bonus. That was what I wanted to do. To me, that was the top of the mountain.
Well, Tim, just remember, if the Philadelphia Eagles win on Sunday, there is still a chance for a three-peat in the world of sports in 2025, and it happens with Joseph Newgarden at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Glad to know that you will still be on the fruit stand, as we call it, calling that race for him and working with Team Penske. I appreciate the time and the explanation today.
Yeah, appreciate having me. Thanks, Jake.
All right, Tim Cindric joining us, Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. We come back, we'll get more into that Pacers conversation. As a matter of fact, Scott Agnes is going to join us on the program just about 30 minutes from now. We've got Stephen Holder at 2 o'clock. Speaking of Holder, not one but two guys that I wonder if the Colts don't reach out to. I was curious because if they're available, I think, as I talked about, not only trades can make your team better, so too can free agency signings. Are there two of them that the Colts actually take a look at? We'll explain next. Axel and I are spirit animals here. I love that Tim Cindric is a huge Guns N' Roses fan. As a matter of fact, we were in Pocono, I don't know, several years ago, and Cindric has a very defined and unique walk. He always looks like he's in a hurry, and he was walking down pit road, and he sees me. And I mean, this is, it's not like we hang out all the time, but I mean, professionally, we have a very good relationship. But he like flags me down, and I go up to him, and I thought he was like looking around, like making sure nobody else was listening. And I thought, and this was right during silly season, and I thought he's going to break the news right here that they're about to sign Rossi or some big, he's going to give me a really big nugget. And he says, "Dude, did you hear that they found 2 new singles from Guns N' Roses?" I'm like, really? He's like, "Yeah, Shadow of Your Love. You heard it yet?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I have." And he's like, "It's awesome. You got to listen to it." Thank you to Tim Cindric for joining us on the show. I had mentioned from the Colts standpoint, and the Colts are one that have always been pretty just stand put, I guess, when it comes to free agency or trades, that kind of thing. You got 2 guys out there right now, Myles Garrett, Cooper Kupp. There are 2 players that have said, in Myles Garrett's case, essentially said, "I want out." And this guy's a complete beast, right? I mean, he single-handedly, if you saw what he did for Cleveland when they were here at Lucas Oil Stadium, he made plays that it was like 1 on 11. He is a beast, and he is a game-changing type player. But if you're Myles Garrett, you've sat through in Cleveland and watched now a complete debacle at your quarterback position and what seems to be a completely aimless franchise of where they're going, because they gave all this guaranteed money to Deshaun Watson. He gets hurt. Then you find out he's hurt again. They've just kind of patch-mealed along. They actually played okay towards the end of the year in spurts. But if you're Garrett, you're thinking, look, I'm probably seeing light at the end of the tunnel of my prime here. I understand why, and maybe he sees Indianapolis as the same. Now, he's not a free agent. He would have to be traded. But it's entirely possible that he looks at Indianapolis and goes, yeah. I mean, they still got huge quarterback question. There's a lot going on there. And I know that he plays an area that seemingly the Colts feel like they have good young pieces. But I'm sorry, none of them are Myles Garrett. And likewise at the receiver position, if you look at Cooper Kupp and the fact that the Rams have essentially gone to him and said, "You know what? It's nothing personal, but like we kind of want to see other people. So, we're not if you decide that you go out there and you get on Tinder and you meet somebody, we're not going to stop you. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to trade you." And my understanding is that Kupp is like, "Wait, what?" Now, Garrett, 2 years left on his contract, roughly $37 million. Kupp, you dock $10 million off that. So 2 years, I think around $27 million left that's owed to him. But both of them are positions, Eddie, it would seem, that could assist Indianapolis, right?
For sure on Myles Garrett. I'll push back you a little bit on Cooper Kupp just because he's primarily an inside receiver.
So you think he's a Josh Downs, basically. Yeah.
And I'd rather take and continue to develop with Josh Downs because he's significantly younger.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I just feel like if you look, for example, to that point, guess what we're going to see on Sunday in Kansas City and Philly that the Colts need to take a look at the mirror at? Guess what we're going to see that you don't see at Lucas Oil Stadium?
Speed? Athleticism?
Close. Think
Vaunted
about it.
Defense?
I'll tell you next. You know, when college football was in the 4-team playoff, and you just had, more often than not, and obviously, you had Clemson, Alabama, Oregon was usually there, Ohio State was usually in the mix, LSU had some runs there, Notre Dame made it a couple of times, Oklahoma had, in the early years of it, some teams. And I would watch those games, and then I would watch like Indiana and Purdue or some of the middle-tier bowl games. I mean, even, Iowa State and Missouri or something like that. And the one thing that jumped out was, especially in the SEC schools and the Clemson, back, and obviously there's been a shift now where the Midwest has really picked up their college game, but there was such a noticeable and sizable difference that you could see in terms of overall speed. And you said it, Eddie, when I said, what are you going to see on Sunday? Speed. But it's more so this. It's not even speed at like the defensive positions, or it's the fact that they have seemingly Kansas City and Philadelphia both. They have what feels like a surplus of open space guys.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that just – Josh Downs is one of them. And I'll give the Colts credit and Reggie Wayne credit for saying, this guy, Josh Downs, that's what you need. And I think they thought A.D. Mitchell was going to be that. But as good as Michael Pittman Jr. is, and he is a very good player and an extremely reliable target for Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco or whoever it's going to be next year, right? And Alec Pierce is really good at getting behind the defense. I mean, he is a speed guy, but Alec Pierce is a speed guy more in just straight line speed, get down behind the defense, and then make a big play. But there's a difference in basically zigzag speed, right? Like guys that just seemingly can go in any variation, any direction, and literally the defender. You know, you've seen the clips of Barry Sanders making moves where a defensive back is spinning himself around, and then before you know it, boom, he's a stack of pancakes because he just spun himself into a tizzy. and you need receivers that have that. I mean, you saw it. Saquon Barkley just did it, where he gets in space, and it was off of a reception. No, it might have been a run in that play, where he loses his footing, but he spins around, and his center to gravity is low enough that he's able to then in space just create.
Hurdle a dude backwards?
Yeah, I mean, just create in space. And so what the Colts need, the area where I feel like the Colts are the most archaic and where the Colts are, as I've said before, it feels like the Indianapolis Colts have been built like the 98 Knicks or the 98 Bulls. Like, it feels to me like for the first 8 years of his tenure, Chris Ballard has built the Colts in the same structure of, if Kevin Pritchard called Chris Ballard and said, you know what, I need you to build me a roster for the Pacers, Ballard would go out and get a back-to-the-basket 7-foot center, a 6'10 screening power forward, and a 6'2 defensive point guard, because that's what won in the old era of the NBA. And in the old era of the NFL, a big over-the-middle receiver was important, but you didn't necessarily think and dwell as much on the little guys in space, the Brandon Stokeleys, the Troy Walters. Now every team has seemingly 5 of them. And it's not about big possession receiver. It's about play make, get the ball out quickly, get it to that guy, and let them go. And they seemingly have them. They're like water drops on the window outside your car when you're driving on a rainy day. There's just droplets going all over the place. And all of a sudden, one of them streaks across the windshield, and you're like, where did that one come from? And that's what the Colts need. So, to your point, Eddie, and I'm not saying Cooper Kupp necessarily has left in him being that kind of an open space guy, but when you say they have a Josh Downs, they don't need a second Josh Downs, I would say they need a third, fourth, and fifth Josh Downs. Yeah. You just can't have too many of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, you need someone like an A.J. Brown, personally speaking here.
He's kind of a hybrid, right? Because he can be both.
Yeah. He's very powerful. He's very fast. I mean, He's one of the best receivers in terms of yards after catch.
How about Tennessee just like they put him out in a yard sale, right?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't they also get a Betty Crocker cooker like warmer for that with him at the garage sale? Isn't that right?
That or they got
75 cents OBO.
Or they got some, discounts down in Nashville for some of the country bars.
Tootsie's? Was that the name of the joint? Tootsie's? Yeah. Or Kid Rock, which is the largest seller of Bud Light, by the way, apparently on Broadway, just so you know, Kid Rock's bar. Here's the other thing about the Super Bowl you're going to see. It's taken me a long time to figure this out, but I finally figured it out. What would you say are the sexy NFL franchises? The franchises the kids like. The franchises that if somebody says they're a fan of them, you're like, yeah, that's cool. I get it. They're not great, but like they're fun. They're kind of flashy. Like who would you say are the flashy, upbeat, Ferrari, sexy, trendy NFL teams? I mean, the Chiefs were 3 years ago, right?
Washington?
Okay, Jaden Daniels, I'll give you that a little bit. Historically speaking, I guess I'd just say over the last 10, 15 years.
Over the last 10, 15 years?
I'll give you a couple of teams here, and you tell me whether or not you consider it like hip, cool.
Okay.
Just fun.
I had a couple off the top of my head already.
Okay, let me give you a couple.
Okay.
Couple offers. And you tell me yay or nay.
Okay.
Okay. Arizona Cardinals.
Nay.
Okay. Denver Broncos.
Ooh. I'll go with yay here.
Okay. Seattle Seahawks.
Nay. They just haven't had the production.
I'm not talking about wins.
I know.
I'm talking about they've got cool uniforms. They got a cool stadium. They got a cool vibe. You're like, man, it'd be cool to go to a game there. Their fans look fun. Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. Yes to Seattle.
Okay. Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, for sure, because of their coach.
Right. Okay. And it's sunny and they got a pool and
it's Miami.
It's Miami, right? Dallas Cowboys.
That's always going to be.
Of course, they got Jerry's World. Okay. Now let me give you a couple others. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
New York Giants.
No.
Okay. New York Jets.
God, no.
Okay. New England Patriots.
Now, no.
Okay. I was going to say Pittsburgh, but I'll go with, Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes.
See, I disagree a little bit on Philly. Here's my point. My point is this. If you think back to, and I've said this before, but I truly believe this, there's the power of the subconscious, the power of the subliminal. Back in the day when people would go to movie theaters, you would hear these stories about like, hey, have you ever noticed what? When you go to the movie theaters, like in the previews, you don't notice this, but there's like little subtle, like subliminal flashes that say Coca-Cola that comes up on the screen for like 2 seconds. You got to like pause the film before you can even really notice it. And it's like tiny, but it tells people in their brain to go out and get a Coca-Cola while they're at the theater. This might be urban legend, but it was a talking point like in the Y2K era, okay? Or, people say like, when you're selling a house, the smart thing to do when you sell a house is when you're showing the house and the realtor's going to come over and show some perspective of a young couple, bake cookies. Why? Well, because when they smell the scent of chocolate chip cookies being made, it feels like home. And then they're going to want to buy the house.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're watching the NFL, and everybody watches the NFL, but more often than not, oftentimes because it's a bigger market and they know that they're going to get the bigger audience later in the day, okay? Like, the Colts suck when it's like, gosh, the Colts schedule came out and every game's Sunday at 1 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
So, that the big market teams, the New York Jets, the New York Giants, the Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles, even when they're not very good, the New England Patriots, all of these Northeast teams, even when they're not very good, they're usually on at 4:30 or they're on like the Thursday night game or a Sunday night game here and there when they're great. I can't wait to watch the 3-9 Jets and the 4-8 Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
But they know they're going to get a big audience. So when you think about, again, subtle subliminal here, when you think about the vast majority of time you're watching NFL games, which 60% of the season, 70% of the season, you're watching it when the weather outside is total crap. So you're sitting at home and you're watching a 4 o'clock game or a Thursday night game, and more often than not, it's a team that's playing in one of those markets, and you're looking at dark, like it has never once in the history of mankind, it has never once been a game in Foxborough that was a Patriots home game after like mid-September where it wasn't 38 degrees, spitting sleet and or rain with the camera lens is like half fogged over. You can't tell what's going on. It's depressing, and you're just like, ugh, right?
Yeah.
When you watch it. And so, be it fair or not, when people see the Philadelphia Eagles or the New York Giants or the New York Jets, it subliminally doesn't tell them to go get a Coke at the movie theater. It doesn't subtly tell them to buy the house, but it has its own subtle subliminal message, which is this is drab and depressing. And I think that's a big reason why, as good as they are, the Philadelphia Eagles have never been like an America's team. The New York Jets have never been. They've tried. The network has tried relentlessly. They still talk about Joe Namath wearing a fur coat, and it was literally 56 years ago, right? They still talk about Joe Namath throwing a football around because Bobby Brady was sick. They still are talking about Tim Tebow. Let's go live for the 19th time in an hour during ESPN SportsCenter to the Jets training camp because Tim Tebow's practicing. Aaron Rodgers now. The Jets suck. They're terrible, right?
Yeah.
But they enforce those things because of the market size of it. But what you as a viewer, none of those teams become a cachet sexy team because they play in areas that subliminally and subtly remind you of the time when you're at home and you're on the couch and you just kind of want to lay around and be lazy all day.
I got a couple for you here quickly, Jake. Detroit.
Detroit, to me, I think most people think of Thanksgiving. I mean, now it's different, right? I mean, Detroit now is certainly kind of America's team because they've been the underdog for so long. Their coach is like a likable guy, and they got speed at every position, right?
San Francisco.
Okay, San Francisco is one that I think is always the gold helmets and even though the weather was always weird at Candlestick, I think the Niners are seen as sexy. Also, fast at every position.
Last one here, Buffalo.
Okay, Buffalo's interesting because Buffalo's the one exception because the weather's always terrible and it's Rust Belt Middle America, not Middle America, but Rust Belt America. But because they are always playing in like 6 feet of snow and people are like shirtless and jumping onto tables and all that, people see Buffalo and they go, those guys are a party. And they also just feel bad because you're like, these people deserve a Super Bowl because they lost 4 of them and they live in Buffalo, right? And it's a smaller market, so people automatically sympathize and empathize with a smaller market. Last night, 2 small market teams, Pacers, Jazz, played in Utah. Indiana did what they needed to do, and why there's optimism there in struggling against Utah, why there's a good sign to be seen. We'll talk about that, and Scott Agnes joins us next. Hour is underway in Indianapolis. For that matter, the 1 o'clock hour is underway everywhere in the Eastern time zone. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program. It's Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Thanks to Tim Cendrick, joined us just about an hour or so ago to explain his kind of step back from all of the roles that he had with Team Penske. Yesterday, it was, whenever I hear the song Sweet Child of Mine, I think about the first job that I had in high school was at O'Malley's over at 56th Street by Cathedral. It's now a Walmart marketplace, I think. Great job. I loved working at O'Malley's. But Scott McConnell, when he was working in the dairy section, had the Appetite for Destruction cassette tape and introduced me to Sweet Child of Mine, and it was in the springtime. So whenever I hear that song, it reminds me of the spring, and yesterday felt like spring. It was great, man. 61 degrees. It's amazing how different 61 feels now than it does, as I always say, like in August or September when it first dips down. Eddie, did you get out and enjoy the spring fever?
I wish I could have.
Run around in a Speedo, did you?
I did not. No.
You know who, my understanding is, runs around in Speedos frequently?
Kevin Bowen?
No, Scott Agnes, who joins us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Joining us to talk about the Pacers last night in Utah, taking on the Jazz, and then Fever news as well. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing well, but that's some bad info you got there.
You're more a swimming trunks kind of guy, right?
Now I am, certainly. Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, now you are. Does that mean you
well,
used
when you're
to be
a kid,
Speedo
you're
guy?
doing. When you're a kid, you're doing swim team and stuff. Of course, you're wearing a Speedo,
That's fair.
but that's
Well, just
years ago.
Let me tell you something. Just wait until you hit the big 5-0, and then all of a sudden you're like, where did the fifth tire come from? So, yeah, you got to be careful. Scott, I thought last night, let's begin with this. And I'll just cut right to this chase. There was, as the game started, I'm looking at social media, and, of course, people are trying to draw parallels between the fact that Miles Turner is not dressed and the trade deadline is now within 72 hours, and Miles Turner's been linked to a lot of different things. I personally do not believe, and you can never say never, because if a team calls up, I'm sure the Los Angeles Lakers probably had no interest in trading, for example, Anthony Davis, and then the Mavericks call and say, hey, you want Luka Doncic? And suddenly now a guy is tradable, right? I'm not saying that Miles Turner is not tradable, but I don't personally believe that the Pacers are actively looking to do that. Your thoughts?
I would agree with you, Jake. I don't see any reason why, if you're the Pacers right now, you'd have any push to move on from him, especially given your current center situation that changed the first game of the season when James Wiseman suffered a ruptured Achilles, and then 10 days later, Isaiah Jackson as well. That certainly factors into this whole equation here. And I thought it was interesting, Jake, just watched in the last hour Rob Pelinka of the Lakers talking about the Luka trade as they introduced him, and also he was asked about the center market. He was like, look, man, there's just nothing. It's dry. There's nothing there, which does certainly probably provide more value for players like Miles, but at the same time, I think the biggest thing I keep coming back to in all this, Jake, is if you move on from him, you would have to get a starting caliber center, because if not, you are doing a disservice to what your coaching staff and these players have worked on and worked for the past several years. You can't just throw in the towel because he is a free agent this summer and you may not bring him back, although I believe the most likely scenario is that this partnership does continue.
Yeah, the thing about Turner, Scott, and I've said this, I'm a broken record with this. I believe that the Pacers have built, like, Siakam is a great player, and at times a standalone great player. Like, he'd be great anywhere. Halliburton is a great player. Nesmith, they have very good pieces. But I believe that those pieces, that perhaps the most important Jenga piece in all of it is Miles Turner, with the way that he plays and what he can do offensively and then what he brings to the table defensively. He, to me, may be the hardest player on that roster to replicate. And we saw that last night, right? To your point, I just feel like he is the one piece that more pieces flow off of than any other on that roster. And that's crazy to say with Halliburton and Siakam, but do you agree with some of what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I do. It's a great premise because of what he does at both ends of the floor. It wasn't too long ago, maybe 3 years ago, when the defense was so dependent on him. Like, it was so bad at point of attack and on the perimeter that they would essentially just funnel their player 2 Miles, which is why I think he was second in blocks. Not only is he a good shot blocker, but he got more opportunities because that's kind of the defense that they leaned on there several years ago. I think that's still, to some extent, the case in terms of defense and where they need him. We saw last night the paint success. And the rebounding numbers, we know Miles is not an elite rebounder by any means, but the Pacers won the game despite being out-rebounded 60-37, and certainly their frequent missed shots played into all that. But, yeah, you remove him from the equation, and I think the drop-off is bigger than any other position there, right? Like, if Halliburton's out, which we've seen just a couple times this season, you slide Nembhard, you slide Ben Shepherd. Same goes on down the line with Nesmith. Okay, here comes Ben Mathurin, and Johnny Furphy can give you a few minutes. So, yeah, I thought last night was a perfect representation, Jake, of Miles' impact and why you should not just toss out here, hey, yeah, trade Miles, contract year. It makes all kinds of sense.
Do you believe, Scott, that Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files is our guest on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line? Could Indiana now be more tempted to go into the luxury tax than they have been in years past?
My first question is, for what? It depends, obviously, on what it is.
Well, let me rephrase that.
Sure.
Not necessarily right now. Here's what I've been saying. You only move Miles Turner in one of 3 scenarios. The first is you are made some sort of an unbelievable offer that you can't refuse, right?
Sure.
The second is that Miles Turner goes into their office and says, guys, I've thought long and hard about this, and I don't want to live in Indiana anymore. I don't want to be a Pacer, so I'm not going to re-sign here. If that's the case, then you've got to think about it. And I'm saying these are the situations where you would move him. And then the third would be is if they say, we just don't think that we're going to be able to re-sign him. Now, in the third, you would have to then make some moves, whether it be you get rid of Toppin or you get rid of contracts that would free up to get him. Or you say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and re-sign him, go over into the luxury tax because we want to keep him here, and then we'll figure out after the fact what we need to do to maneuver things around in, say, a year. I think that's a distinct possibility. You tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that's something, if your ownership – not yet, unless there's a significant player you can go acquire. But I think going into this offseason, if things continue to progress the way they do, they get to the playoffs, probably advance at least one round, then yes. I mean, you look here in the last decade, I bet every team that has won a championship has been a luxury tax paying team. It's a reality to have success. The advantageous thing is the last few years, and while the Pacers are on the rise here, they have not had to pay into it. And the thing you want to avoid is the repeater tax, which is why there's that emphasis on not paying it unless it's needed here. And so I think it's more likely than not that the Pacers would move on from a player or two elsewhere in order to re-sign Miles Turner and continue that relationship. And as you wisely laid out at the very end here, just because you're technically over the luxury tax, say next August or next October, doesn't mean you finish the year as a luxury tax team. There are moves you can maneuver. For example, Dallas, by the way, with this latest trade is now under the luxury tax because Anthony Davis waived his trade clause, or his trade bonus rather. And so that's something they did here mid-season to adjust appropriately. So those are the things Ted Wu and the front office over there have to figure out.
When you look at it, Scott, last night, Thomas Bryant, assess for me, in your opinion, his play and whether or not he is a guy that should get more minutes or the minutes he's getting right now is about where he should be.
Yeah, I would say not in the starting role, but what he has been getting is about right. About that 15 to 18 minutes per game is about what I expected and wanted to see from him. I thought early on it was a fewer, but you're trying to get him comfortable with the team and not break up this continuity that this Pacers team had prided itself on and trying to carry over from last year. So getting into about that 15-minute window is about right. I thought the story of the game was Thomas Bryant, quite frankly. Yes, you had the McConnell sequence. You had Siakam in the fourth quarter where he scored 10 of his 22. But if I was in Salt Lake City, to me, that is the story. It's a player who had such a challenging first 3+ quarters, who got down on himself, who had that interaction with a teammate that I think is a good growing pain as they try to understand each other, two of the quieter players on the team. And Thomas not to get down on himself, for a coaching staff to continue to believe in him and what they wanted, then for what Thomas was able to do over the final 3+ minutes in closing time, I thought that was the most substantial story from the win last night.
Yeah, the one thing about him, Scott, I like Thomas Bryant, and I think I think he's been everything that they could ask since they acquired him, right? Notably,
agreed.
And again, I want to be clear here. I'm not, you and I aren't sitting there in the locker room when the team is getting ready. Although I shouldn't say that. I mean, I've been in, fairly recently and seen the interactions that take place just before the team goes out. But it's not a regular thing. But my understanding is from talking to people that are there and are involved with it, that Bryant has been an outstanding teammate, that he has been done and acted in all of the ways. It's two kinds of guys, Scott. There's some kinds of guys that you give them 18 minutes and they get it. They understand the role. There's other guys that you give them 18 minutes and they're going to sit there and complain to anybody that will listen that they should get 20 and 22 and 24 and on and on and on. I think he's been a solid teammate and soldier since he got here. But he clearly, to me, has a minute ceiling, and that's why I just can't see the value in parting ways with Miles Turner, because you're just putting your eggs all in one basket.
No, you would have to acquire a center. That's what it simply comes down to, Jake. You're right. You cannot totally say, hey, we're good with Thomas Bryant for the rest of the season. No worries here. And I would agree. I've heard many of the same things where Thomas has exceeded expectations both on the court and how quickly he's gotten to know his teammates and embraced all of that. I'm right there with you. The thing with Thomas here, you have to understand, too, is his perspective, right? Where he came from, he wasn't playing. He was already on a league minimum deal, so he had to earn that contract. Then he wasn't getting minutes. He comes here, fresh start, in a place that there is a lot of familiarity and just built-in fan base because of IU fans. There's a warm blanket comfort feeling, I think, for a guy like that. And so the fact that he's also got 25 minutes and not 8 or 10 last game, I think you also saw some growing pains of, hey, he's got to play through this. They need him out there, and I thought that's why it was so telling that they went back to him and then he delivered late.
Scott Agnes is our guest from the Fieldhouse Files on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas Line. All right, Scott, before we get to the fever real quick, I want to ask you this. Obi Toppin, I'll throw out Aaron Nesmith, maybe Ben Shepherd. Of those three, any chance that and Benedict Mathurin, sorry, I don't know if I mentioned Benedict Mathurin. Any chance that Mathurin or the combination of those other guys are involved in a standalone trade here before the deadline?
Yeah, I've come to the belief here as of now that I just don't see them making any big move or telling move. I think we've seen in the past where this front office believes in the letting the players see it through and letting them finish off the year and finish what they started. And I think it's more likely than not that will again be the case here. I don't think there's anything substantial necessarily out there. But then again, what did we all see kind of after that WWE Saturday night when the news broke and we're all curious what in the world just happened there? So I think that changes now all of our beliefs that any outlandish trade might be possible if you're dealing with the right people.
Are you a WWE guy, Scott?
I am not. I just had a unique opportunity to be right there and to cover it, and so I'll be writing about Tyrese and the Pacers who were ringside there. But that was my first experience. I had not followed it outside of probably what Pat McAfee does for the broadcast ever.
Did you like it?
I did, probably more from the sport and the production and the crowd and the observation standpoint.
I heard people
the challenge
say,
is I don't know the storylines, right? So,
well, I heard people say that, and this sounds crazy, but I heard people that went to it say that while it was awesome because of the mammoth size of it, that it was logistically like too crowded, if that makes sense. I know it sounds weird, but like the getting in and out, apparently, the parking in and out, almost like they tried to fit too many people into what comfortably can be in there.
Jake, I know the logistics of Indy quite well, like you do. I waited an hour for an Uber ride. And I purposely did not request it at the stadium. I went to a nearby bar about a half mile, a little less, just near outside. It took me an hour. So I can't imagine if I was out of town and spending hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars trying to get back to my hotel room. Maybe I've had 5, 6, 7 beers I'd been drinking all day. Yeah, that would be a frustrating part. Absolutely.
Listen, I'm going to pretend to not be offended that you bypassed the Uncle Jake's taxi, which let's be real. I mean, it's free. Were you afraid?
It wasn't New Year's Eve, though. Why would I be thinking about this?
I didn't open up Uncle Jake's taxi, and you might have been worried about puking in the Jeep, which is a major violation. Scott, Fever moves. They've made several of them here. They are clearly pushing all in. With the time being now, with Caitlin Clark here and Stephanie White in her first year in the helm, do you like the moves?
I do. Yeah, we're seeing time and time again, to your point, how they are all in. And that goes from a coaching change, that goes to entirely new front office, to the announcement of a brand new, incredible, state-of-the-art practice facility. And then now with the roster changes. And we heard Stephanie White lay out what they wanted. They wanted depth. They wanted size. They wanted experience. They wanted shooting. And I think they have addressed all of that. And the overwhelming takeaway to me is the growing familiarity with all these individuals. There's ties to all of them to the team, whether it's DeWanna Bonner being coached by this coaching staff the last couple of years in Connecticut, Natasha Howard starting her career here, Kelly Krauskopf being the one to believe in her and draft her all the way back in 2014. And so I like the way the Fever have chosen to fill out this roster, and I think it also shown with the addition of Howard in particular, and as well as Bonner and free agency. Yes, of course, Caitlin Clark is a draw, and that's going to help bring players in now and for the foreseeable future.
Scott Agnes, who, of course, spends his free time freelancing, covering the WWE, but notably with Fieldhouse Files, Pacers coverage, Fever as well. They've got a press conference to introduce some of their latest moves coming up at 2 o'clock. That coverage will be on Fieldhouse Files with Scott. Appreciate it, Scott.
All right, thanks, Jake.
All right, Scott Agnes joining us, Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas Line. I did hear that about, and open disclaimer, here's my knowledge of wrestling. When I was a kid, Superstation TBS used to air Georgia Championship Wrestling at night, and that was like, I'm assuming, the B list of the B list. And then when I was a young adult, I went to go visit Adam Alexander, who we had done high school broadcasting together, and we were best of buddies, still are. And Adam, I was in college. Adam was beginning his broadcasting career. He went 2 years to Vincennes and then took a job in Evansville. So he got a way head start on his broadcasting career, which was very smart. Obviously, has paid off for him. And I went down to visit Adam, who now works NASCAR broadcasts for Amazon Prime, and as well as I believe USA is where they will air the races that he's doing. So I went down to visit Adam, and he said, it was a Saturday night, and Adam says, yeah, I realized that you came down for the weekend, but we've actually got to go across the bridge into Kentucky. I got a couple of things I got to do there. And I think it was in Owensboro, Kentucky. And I said, okay, what are we doing? And he said, well, on Saturday nights, there's a place here at the TV station that bought some time, and I've got to do the play-by-play for some wrestling. And I said, wrestling like high school wrestling? And he said, no, like pro wrestling. So we went to this armory in, I think it was Owensboro, Kentucky, and there were about 200 people in this place. I would say 200 people and probably somewhere between 400 and 450 packs of cigarettes, and then a ring in the middle, and it was in a gym in this armory. And and I'm watching this wrestling thing, and it's like the lowest of the low, but whatever. I mean, we're having fun with it, and Adam's doing the play-by-play for it. And about halfway through it, some guy, after his ninth Schlitz, figured out that the wrestlers were using the same locker room. And so he stands up and screams that this is all rigged because the enemies are coming out of the same locker room, and how could they be sharing a locker room if they hate each other? So he and a couple of other guys then decided to storm the locker room and bum rush it to try to basically do their own, inside edition National Enquirer investigation over the fact that there's camaraderie amongst these rivals that they've invested their time and money into. And when they tried to raid the locker room, some of the wrestlers tried to keep them out. A brawl ensued. The police were called, and the whole thing was called off. And then I think we went to Denny's and went home. So that was my knowledge of that's my experience with wrestling.
When was the last time you had Denny's?
And I know that's a good question. I do know this.
You went on a spree of like KFC, Long John Silver's.
My buddy Scott McConnell, for his 21st birthday, Denny's used to offer a free Grand Slam breakfast on your birthday.
Yep.
So we went for his 21st birthday, and he was all gung-ho. Scott had a couple of cocktails. And we went to Denny's, and he ordered his Grand Slam breakfast for free, but we were out for his 21st birthday, but his 21st birthday was on Saturday, and we got there at like 2 in, so it was technically Sunday, so they charged him, and he was livid. It almost looked like the scene at the Armory, truth be told.
See, Jake, this is where you as a friend would have picked up the tab. You're like, you know what, man? It's your birthday.
Well,
I got you covered. Unless you were buying him drinks all night long.
Scott had his dad's American Express card.
Oh.
So I think everybody at Denny's got a free Grand Slam.
Got it.
Because Scott was Grand Slammed. But anyway, so wrestling, I have nothing against it. And back in those days, though, my point being long-winded here, that people really did think it was real. People did not realize that this was all scripted theater. Now it's totally out there, and I understand that people love it and it's entertaining. And I've heard great stories of. I think these guys and gals are pretty philanthropic and do a lot with kids and charities when they go to the different markets. But people just absolutely go bonkers over it. And I know that what happened the other night at Lucas Oil Stadium was massive, and it was fabulous for the city and for the economy and all of those things. But I did hear people say, yeah, man, it was like a nightmare getting in and out of there. And the Lucas Oil Stadium is not a great stadium for big, huge crowds all getting in the same place because it's kind of hard to get around. And then you have the escalators of death, right? Which can be a disaster. One person slips on that bad boy, and you got a real problem on your hands. I mean, a real problem on your hands, right?
Yeah.
For what it's worth. But you did or did not go, Eddie?
No, I did not. Pacers played that night, so I was busy working.
That's right. Running the board for the Pacer game. Speaking of playing tonight, both of them, Indiana, Purdue in action. Preview next. The flags are, I guess, furled and crossed over, meaning halfway through the race. 1:30 here on a Tuesday of Query & Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Thank you for joining us.
Where have you been?
Where have you been, in fact, is a good question there, Eddie.
I've been right here, Jake. I don't know. I know sometimes you worry about me.
I do. 239-1070 is the telephone number of this program, should you ever feel inclined to join it. Tonight it is Indiana and Purdue both, or I should say, is that right grammatically? It is Indiana. It is Purdue. Those two teams separately playing in the Big Ten tonight. We'll begin with Purdue, who is in Iowa for a 7 o'clock tip. There's part of me that wondered if this isn't the proverbial trap game. I don't think it is, because they've got USC on Friday, and they're coming off of the Indiana game. But Iowa's kind of sneaky, because that feels to me Fran McCaffrey kind of has entered into Kirk Ferentz category.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like every 3 or 4 years, pretty good. Most years, you're like, yeah, they're okay. Then you look it up and you go, oh, I thought they were better than that. Yeah, they're competitive. They got a couple nice wins every year to keep you interested.
Then in football, they make it to the Big Ten championship, get slaughtered. They make it to the NCAA tournament. They get upset in the first round.
Totally.
It's like a constant cycle.
That's exactly right. I mean, Iowa is, and I've always liked Iowa. They're kind of innocuous, right? But it is kind of a tough place to play. It's a good arena. It's a tough place to play. And for Purdue, knowing that SC's around the corner, and USC's intriguing also, right? Because if they're starting to, they've won 2 of their last 3, but again, going to Nebraska, okay, sure. But that win, beating Michigan State, I think opened up people's eyes a little bit to just the fact that USC does have some athleticism there, and you know that Eric Musselman is a good coach, obviously. It's just a matter of how long it takes him to kind of get things implemented. But, I saw an interesting column from our friend Brian Newbert at Gold and Black. And I think what he was saying, which I agree with, is that Purdue gets a lot of credit, and I don't know how long this lasts. I don't know how long you can keep the water from crashing through this dam. But in the NIL era, in the transfer portal era, in the what can you do for me era, Purdue has managed to do Purdue things, which is basically block out the noise and just continue with what and who they are. And in doing so, not get caught up in and swept up into and magnetized into and sucked into the vortex of the one and done architecture style. And that style, as you've seen at Kansas, at Kentucky, for that matter, at Indiana, is we're going to go out in July and we're going to put together the best roster that money can buy. And then we're going to push our chips in and see what happens. There's 2 dangers in that. There's a huge payoff in it. When you strike, and you strike with players that come together and work together and gel and have that kind of talent, you're sitting pretty. But the downside of it is this, and I've seen it with Indiana. I mentioned yesterday the DM that Miles Rice got. And in addition to that, not just like players that are sitting in class with players, and listen, the gambling thing's only going to get more and more and more prevalent. But now with NIL, what you have is a percentage of your alumni that have financial investment in the product. It's one thing to be a program that has a car dealer or a banker or a mortgage broker that's a huge fan and pays for a suite and goes down and takes his kids to the games and then says, man, I really want them to win better because I'm spending a lot of money for these tickets. But it's another thing when that guy is directly writing the check that he knows, because he's been told it, is going right into the pocket of the guy that he's expecting to win games for him at center. If you go to a Pacer game, you pay good money for a ticket, and you're like, man, these guys are making so much money based on the money I'm paying for a ticket, so I have a right to boo. Sure.
Your cat?
That's right. But what about when a guy is saying, and I've heard this, I've heard people say, look, I thought this player would play better because I helped facilitate for him to get there, and I knew what his demands were, and we met the demands. So what am I getting in return? And once you get caught up into that vortex of that, then not only do you not have a guarantee that you're putting together the right team, but when you have boosters and alumni and fans that now feel like they have a financial investment, meaning that they have a voice, meaning that they have an authority, then the program in general becomes less inviting for people all over the place. And I think for Indiana, in their coaching search, I think they have two targets. I think they're going to call Boston, and I think they're going to call Ann Arbor. And then after that, if they're not able to land one of those two guys, then they go into the coaching search mode. Then you've got to weed through whether or not coaches are really serious about coming to visit you or whether they're just trying to get more money out of where they are. But I think that, and look, I'm not indicting Indiana. I don't think this is exclusive to Indiana. I think Kentucky saw it when Calipari left, and they ended up obviously getting a good coach, seemingly, in Mark Pope, who, you know, at least had experience under his belt of running a college program. But I don't think Mark Pope was their first choice. They went after a couple of other guys. I think people just said, you know what, I don't want to get involved in the expectations and the pressures that come with having to answer to not only boosters and alumni, but people now who are paying the players directly and now see it up to me to make sure this guy's getting more minutes than this guy because they paid this guy this amount. I mean, it's a hornet's nest. But either way, Indiana's next chance to get back on the right side of things coming off their loss at Purdue, where they did play better. They did. Is tonight, though, at Wisconsin. And it's been an absolute – I've been to Amityville, New York, the Amityville Horror. I went to the Amityville Horror House, not the other one, not the from Texas, Horror House. And so I've seen a House of Horrors. When I was there in Amityville, I was like, oh, okay, there's the Amityville Horror House. Maybe I should say horror home. That sounds better, does it not? But either way, that's what Madison has been for Indiana. Who was the leading scorer for Indiana the last time they won at Wisconsin? I'm going to guess Bracy Wright. That's a total guess. No, that would have been, it would have been around that era. Maybe Luke Recker. Was it 98, Eddie?
Yeah, I'm looking it up for you.
Give me the home. Once you look it up, give me the hometown of the player, if it happens to list it, or the jersey number.
By the way, what'd you think of the old IU logo from that time? It was the letter I, letter U. They were separate of the oval.
Oh, that was a football logo. You talking about the Antoine Randall, Cam Cameron helmets?
Yes.
No, not a fan. I mean, we're all biased with what, but to me, the IU logo is the one that was on the side of their shorts in 81, which was basically the same as 87. 81 was a little rounder. 87 was okay, and then they paid some group like $110,000 to come in, and they're like, you should move the U, the arm of the U should go from 45 degrees to 42 degrees. And that was their change that they made. Literally, I kid you not. All right, did you find the box score?
I have not been able to retrieve the box score just yet.
I'm going to guess.
Okay, I found out who the leading scorer was.
Okay, how many points did they have in the game?
23.
Does it list their hometown?
Does not, but I looked it up in terms of where this person was born.
Or their high school?
They were born. Yeah, I found it.
Okay.
So they were born in California, but went to high school in Texas.
At forward for Indiana, He's a 6'8" sophomore from Abilene, I believe, from Abilene, Texas. Number 45, Andre Patterson.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
And he's with, Jake, the Portland Trailblazers.
He is now the assistant general manager for the team that the Pacers are going to see tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice work going into Portland to take on the Trailblazers. So Indiana tonight at Wisconsin. I'm telling you, though, I've said it 100 times. You're going to hear me say it 100 more. It's big. If they get blown out tonight, it gets ugly because they go back and they take on Michigan at home, and it gets ugly. It gets real ugly. Pacers, as you'd mentioned, in action tonight, taking on the Blazers, and Tyrese Halliburton seemed excited about that at the end of last night's game when talking about it, but it was more than that had him excited. We'll explain, and Stephen Holder joins us in 20. So last night in Salt Lake, Tyrese Halliburton with the 3 inside of a minute to give Indiana the lead back, and then they hold on. Thomas Bryant made a couple of plays for them late. They were down, what, Eddie, like as much as 12 at one point?
15.
15?
Mm-hmm.
To a Utah team that is really like trying to find its footing and figure out. Apparently, Danny Ainge didn't know that he was involved in the Doncic trade. Is that right?
Yeah, he didn't. He had no idea that he was help facilitating Luka to L.A. And by the time he found out, I think it was like an hour before it was official. He was trying to find a way out of it.
I mean, it still keeps him in the West. It's not like, you know what I mean? It'd be different if.
That's exactly why you would want out of it, right? You don't want.
Well, yeah, no. But what I'm saying is, it would be a little easier. In other words, I mean, you're still having to face him the same number of times. Yes, your preference would have been that you would have facilitated for him to go to Atlanta or, wherever, right?
You know, the irony in that is that Danny Ainge is considered one of the biggest snakes.
Oh, I know.
And he got
Totally.
snaked.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, obviously this is a totally moot point, but there is part of me that was like, it's weird that a guy who was like known most commonly as a Celtic was helping facilitate something for the Lakers, because I still think of Celtics Lakers as like the apples and oranges, right?
The predominant rivals.
Yeah, exactly. But nonetheless, Halliburton, you could tell in the post-game interview with Jeremiah Johnson, was giddy but relieved, right, to get out of there. But this is what the Pacers did last night that I liked, is they did what, to go back to Purdue, what Purdue did a year ago with Zach Edey when they went to the national championship game. There were nights where it was ugly. There are nights where nothing's going your way. But great teams find ways to win those nights, those games. And I'm not saying the Pacers right now are a great team, but they are clearly a team, and they are clearly playing better basketball than they were in, say, October. And this is a much better representation, assuming they stay healthy, of what we anticipate them to be when the weather breaks and the spring rolls around and you're getting into the playoffs. I mean, there's no reason to believe that they are not a team that can win a playoff and maybe even 2 playoff series and find themselves right back where they were.
They have a 2-game lead on Milwaukee right now for the 4th seed.
Which is incredible, right?
They're 4 games behind New York, and they have a game left against New York. Now, I don't think they'll catch New York, but...
Yeah, but Giannis is not – I mean, he's not been able to play night in and night out either, and that's a huge lift for Indiana, who, again, they've gone through their lumps from a health standpoint. And one of the things that I give Rick Carlisle in particular a ton of credit is that when they had those injuries, they didn't really panic with it. They just, you call on the number of Johnny Furphy, and obviously you got minutes for Jarris Walker, but you start using Enrique Freeman and guys like that, and just kind of trying to sneak them in to minutes to keep everybody fresh when you had to go kind of by committee for a while there.
Yeah, especially with Johnny Furphy, because you could see his development rapidly as he became more and more
comfortable.
Comfortable, antiquated within the system. And then, last night, for example, with Jarris, he comes off the game where his first DNP of the season, and then he comes out. I thought he provided some excellent minutes for them in the first half and was able to get them back in the game the first half. Now, it wasn't consistent in the second half, but those are the types of things you want to see from Jarris Walker. And I think that's what makes him so fascinating.
I really like Jarris Walker. I hope that they can continue to, because it does feel like he's broken through a little bit here, and you've got to keep giving him minutes in rotation to allow him to continue to grow, because now that he has finally started to show the growth. I remember when we talked to Jarris Walker, and I said, and I was a little bit hesitant to ask it this way, but I basically said to him, I remember playing when I was a player. I mean, I'm still a player, but a basketball player. That's right, a hooper. I said, I remember in those days, the game being like everybody was moving so fast that I knew what I needed to do, and I knew what I wanted to do. I would envision the ball's coming to me on a fast break, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this lane, whatever. But I would start to move before the ball got there. I'd freeze because I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And my body wasn't catching up with with my brain. And I thought it was fascinating that Jarris Walker said, that's totally an answer that is completely the way that I feel, basically. So I knew then he was a young guy that knew what he needed to do, but he just wasn't comfortable yet. And then once that comfort happened and things slowed down for him, you could see, you're like, okay, now he feels like he belongs. He feels like it's not open gym and he's the freshman with the varsity players. He feels like he belongs, and now you're starting, okay, now I'm seeing what this guy can do. But I think I don't know that he has done that with enough consistency to feel comfortable that he doesn't revert back away from that if he is, again, relegated to not getting a lot of minutes. And that's one of the things, tonight with and I think Turner last night, Turner not playing is going to only add further speculation in regards to the trade stuff. But I think, I was talking to J&V actually last night on the phone, and J&V is the one that said, I would think that he's not playing because they know if he's a little dinged up that they've got back-to-back, so they're saving him some of those nights and picking the game where matchup-wise it might be better for him to rest. And I think that's what that was, but we'll see. We'll see tonight, and we'll see for the rest of the trip. Obviously, you got Portland, then you go to L.A. for the two-step with the Clippers and the Lakers. Eddie, you said in the break room, the YouTube break room, there's a conversation that says what exactly? That I have a doppelganger?
Somebody said that you looked like a celebrity.
Okay, well.
And I was like, well, I haven't seen that. That's so on point.
That seems redundant. Okay. Here's the thing. I will tell you, now let me ask you this. The realm of fame of said celebrity is what?
Are you talking like actor, singer,
correct,
comedian? He's an actor.
Okay. On a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most and 1 being the least, the level of stature of an actor, like A-list actor, B-list actor, etc.
I would probably go B-list.
Okay. The peak era of this actor's filmography was when?
Oh, excellent question. I'm still doing research on this guy.
Have I heard of him? Have I heard of him?
Yeah. I've heard of him.
I mean, if it's some guy that was in 4 of the Marvel movies, I'm not going to know it.
No.
Okay. So what's the peak era of this actor's filmography?
I would say late 90s, early 2000s, and into the mid 2000s.
Okay. If it's this guy, then you're going to do the show the rest of the day solo because I'm going to walk out of here and go home and cry.
Okay.
Let me tell you the person people say to me the most often, and it drives me bonkers because I don't see it and I don't find the person to be an attractive human being. Okay? And I think it's because this person has kind of deeper set eyes and I have this weird protruding orbital bone. As a matter of fact, several years ago, I was a candidate for not a candidate, but they wanted to see if I could do LASIK eye surgery. And so I went in and I was there for 5 hours, went through the whole deal getting ready. And then the doctor comes in and goes, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you're not a candidate because your eyes are too far back set in your orbital bones. And then they tried to give me contacts and I couldn't get the contact in my eyes. And the eye doctor's like, yeah, you're just not used to doing it. And I said, no, it's my eyes. When I open my eyes, it's when I try to open them with my fingers, the bone is too hanging over. They don't open very far. And he's like, no, that's it. So I lay back and he tries for 5 minutes. You know what? You're right. Your orbital bone's different. Okay.
I tried telling you, but thanks.
So let me ask you this. Was there ever a movie this guy was in where he went streaking?
I have no idea.
That rules out the guy, hopefully, that I'm – what genre of acting?
Let's see. Probably action.
Okay, good. So it's not Will Ferrell.
No.
Thank goodness.
No.
Because I've had people say to me in public, you look like Will Ferrell. And I'm like, really? I mean, it's like you look like the Elephant Man. I mean, that's what I say back. Okay, give me the initials.
RP.
Roger Penske?
No.
I don't know. Hit me with it.
Ron Perlman.
I'm not sure I knew who Ron Perlman is.
He was in Hellboy.
Yeah, see, he's got the big orbital bones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is he a handsome fellow?
Look him up.
What's the biggest movie he was in? I'm telling you, it's the. You don't tell somebody they look like Hellboy. I mean, that's like saying to somebody you look like that Hulk. I mean, come on. How old is Ron Perlman?
He is now 74.
I mean, what the hell are we doing here? Yeah, look, he's got the big, huge, the eye thing, right? I mean, do I really look like that? Look how fat his face is. I don't have a fat face. This guy's got a fat face. Nah, come on now. This guy looks like he's like Beauty and the Beast. He looks like he's like the sheep from Beauty and the Beast, right? He's got a huge forehead, and he looks like. Here's the thing, his cranium itself looks like you could break stuff on it.
His
right?
cranium looks larger than mine.
Yes.
Not saying a lot.
I mean, in my fat days, maybe like fat me. I mean, I have a fluctuation of weight. Granted, I go up and down a lot, but
Is that just when you go into hibernation?
Yes. But come on. I don't think that's a compliment. Do you think that's a compliment that I look like that guy?
I don't think anyone
how
said it
old
was
is
a
he?
compliment. He's now 74.
He was legally drinking when I was born. Do I look like a 74-year-old guy?
You were legally drinking when I was born.
I know, but nobody's saying you look like me, right?
No.
Do I look 74? That's my
No.
honest question for you.
No.
Man, I mean, that kind of hurts a little bit. But he's a good actor, so I'll get, that's cool. Stephen Holder, by the way, ESPN.com, joins us next. Back with my 9-pound forehead, my 74-year-old white goatee. I remember my dad saying to me once, if you think that somebody looks like someone, if it's somebody that's not deemed to be by most people an attractive person, don't let them know.
And you're letting them know?
And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, just for example, if somebody looks like the old lady on the bicycle in The Wizard of Oz flying past her in the tornado, you don't walk up to her and say, you look like that lady that becomes the witch in The Wizard of Oz, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't walk up to a 45-year-old woman in a nightclub. You don't walk up and say, has anybody ever told you that you look kind of like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies? Right? Now, this guy, his name is Hellboy, and he literally, his head weighs like 47 pounds, 39 of which are in his forehead. And then I got somebody telling me, like, no, I can see it. Somebody who has previously told me they find me attractive says, no, I can see it. Really? I got news for you.
Are you hurt?
Here's the thing.
Are you hurt right now, Jake?
If Shannon tells me that I look like the Hellboy fella, then Stephen Holder's going to be out of luck because it's because of Shannon that I get tickets to the Pacer games when Stephen goes with me occasionally. And if Shannon thinks I look like the Hellboy guy, then all of a sudden the Pacer, that goes dry. We got a real problem. Stephen joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Stephen, are you familiar with that Hellboy guy?
Yeah, I need to Google the image because I haven't seen it in a long time, but I don't remember it being an image I would be flattered to be likened to. So,
He's correct.
Let's hope Shannon doesn't agree.
Well, they're talking about the actor who plays him and Ron Perlman.
Well,
That's
all
who
they
we
do,
say
all
looks
they
like
do,
Jake.
all they do is they slap tanner on him and send him out there. Maybe that's it. I did go tanning the other day. Maybe that's it, right?
I could tell by your hands.
Stephen, who's the fella that does – yeah, my hands are a little orange. Who's the guy that does political commentary, I think, on CNN? Do you know who I'm talking about? You look like him. You look like him.
That's a lot of people. I don't know. I'm not sure. Do I? Who is this? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'll have to look up.
Well, we're going to have to figure this out because I need to know if this is flattering or not.
All right, before we get to talking about the Colts in particular, you were at the Pro Bowl. Give me the scoop from what this is basically flag football, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's lots of silly skills games and flag football. So just before I go on, the little secret is I go, we cover it to a degree, but really I go because it is great access that I get for future stories with all the best players in the NFL, and they're really chilled and they don't have anything pressing going on, so they actually answer my questions. So it's a great little hidden gem of an opportunity for somebody like me who does all kinds of stories. And I go down there and I ask them lots of ridiculous questions about stories that I'm not going to do for 3 more months, and it's great, right? So one-stop shopping, which I love. Not a whole lot of scoop to tell, except I did tell this to J&B last night. I had a quick conversation with Zaire Franklin, though, about Lou Anarumo and what his expectations are there. He was pretty, I would say, enthusiastic about that hire. And he impressed upon me that Anarumo would put guys in position to succeed. And, he certainly runs a different scheme, and that's an issue. Obviously, that's going to be a change, obviously. But I think more specifically, and even beyond just the scheme change, what he was enthusiastic about, Zaire Franklin, is that Anarumo will cater to these guys' strengths and put them in position to succeed. I'm not saying that Gus Bradley did the opposite, but what I would say that is different is his scheme was very much it was very much structured in the same way all the time, and I think sometimes in that approach, you kind of prioritize. You can end up kind of prioritizing the scheme over the players, and so if you agree with that, then maybe you think doing something different would be productive. So that remains to be seen, but that's the expectation. And he did mention something that Anarumo kind of alluded to in his opening press conference, which is there's high expectations for somebody like Kenny Moore, for example. who is, I think, going to be featured in this system. And in Zaire Franklin's words, he said, Kenny is going to the moon in this system. So they're pretty excited about that.
Now, do you believe that Anarumo is excited about Zaire Franklin?
I think he'll be fine. I think he'll actually find ways to maximize him. So, not speaking for the guy, he hasn't been asked specifically, but I think he will find him useful. So here's my take on Zaire Franklin. Like, I get that there are mixed feelings about him, and that's fair, right? But I think if you accentuate what he does well, which is play downhill and go make plays, get to the ball, and he does have a knack for like finding the ball, and he's had a fair share of interceptions and forced fumbles. I think he was second in the NFL in forced fumbles this season, which are game-changing plays, right? Potentially. And so if you can put him in position to do more of that, you're going to have a good player, right? And what you have to do, what you have to do is put the emphasis on that and de-emphasize the stuff he's not good at. Look, I mean, is he the best coverage linebacker in the NFL? No, not even close, right? It's probably one of his weaknesses. I mean, he can do it, but it's not what he does best, right? So there's going to be issues there. But I definitely think that you can get more out of him. I've seen him play better. And so we'll see. I think that's true of a lot of guys on the defense this year. I have seen them play better. And so it remains to be seen if that happens. But I know they have it in them. It doesn't mean they don't need upgrades. They do need upgrades, and they do need some additions. But I also think they have a fair amount of talent, probably more than we give them credit for. And that is why, me personally, that is why I was so thoroughly disappointed in the results. Like, I know there's some talent here. I don't think they're this bad. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how this pans out.
By the way, Van Jones, Stephen, are you familiar with him? Check your phone real quick.
Yeah,
did you see the picture I sent you?
I'll take it. I don't think that's a bad-looking guy. I don't know if I look exactly like him, but I'm not insulted by it. I'll tell you that.
Well, you're both bald, right?
We got that going for us.
And then
lucky us.
I can't recall. You do or don't have like a goatee. You do, right?
Yeah, goatee. A very sorry excuse for a beard sometimes.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the thing.
So, fun fact: I suck at growing facial hair. Like, I can only grow it at the very fringe of like my face, like the frame of my face. This is way too much information, but since we're on the topic, so like I can't grow like a great beard, but I also am bald, and I feel like if your head's bald and your face is bald, then you're just like an alien. So I got to have something going on here, right? So anyway, I do the best that I can. Let's put it that way.
Listen, this Van Jones though, he always wears like a mock turtleneck with a nice sport coat over it. It kind of has your look, right? Like you guys have kind of the same vibe. I'll put it to you that way.
I'll take that. Yeah. Listen, I mean, I put at least 30 seconds into thought into what I put on. I'll say that.
Okay, fair enough.
Which for a guy, that
is pretty good. Yeah, that's 25 above most, right? Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line is where we have Stephen Holder of ESPN.com. Stephen, we're going to watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. We're going to watch Kansas City and Philadelphia. We're going to watch two teams that do what that Indianapolis is not in the ballpark of replicating.
Well, I would say this. They finish. They know how to finish games. And like take Kansas City, for example. Every game they played was a close game just about, right? They find ways. I don't know if they were the best team in every game they played, per se, but they sure as heck won just about all of them. And it's the fact that they finished. They know how to finish. I mean, if you look at the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, take that for example. I'm not saying it was particularly close, but the Commanders were hanging in there a bit, right? And they kept rallying, and every time the Eagles would blow it open, here come the Commanders. They score again, and now you're like, it's like an 8 or 9 point game if they score here, And what happens? The Eagles always made a play to keep them at bay, and then they blew it open at the end. And Saquon, goes for 60 or something, right? Like he always does. So that is what they have in common, and that's why this is a good matchup, because they counterpunch better than anybody. It's like they take your best shot, and then they say, okay, watch this. And then they finish. They finish you off. And, that is, I think, going to be that's at the crux of this matchup. Who can find a way to scratch and claw and make that final play. And that is to relate it to the Colts. That's kind of been the issue. Like, they don't counterpunch all the time. At least they did not this year. They had chances to win lots of games. Did you ever feel like, all right, a play's coming? I feel like a play is coming here, right? You don't have that inevitable sense that they are going to make the play. And maybe that just boils down to talent. I mean, maybe we're overthinking it. I don't know. But I think it's more than that. I do think it's more than that. Talent has a lot to do with it, but I don't think it's the only thing. It may be a little bit of everything. It might be talent. It might be superior coaching. It might be adjustments that are made by coaches. It might be, I don't know, just the mindset of players to some degree. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is a great example. Patrick Mahomes, love him, hate him, whatever. That guy is indefatigable, right? Is that the word? I think.
Can you repeat the word, please?
Indefatigable? Is
Mark
that the word?
Boyle's our guest joining us on the Express Pod. Yeah, one more time.
Listen, I've done it twice. I'm exhausted.
Hold on. Can you spell? And I'm the 1984 Allisonville Elementary School spelling bee runner-up, and I'm widely, oftentimes praised for my lexicon. But spell word for me again, please.
Oh, wait, listen, by the way, here, Miami Lakes Elementary, second grade spelling bee champion.
Well, you won? What word did you win on?
I have no idea. I did not grow up in Miami Lakes, for those wondering.
Miami Lakes. No, hold on just a second.
Spelling bees are a very sensitive subject for Jake.
You want to listen. You want to try to trump me because I was a runner-up at Allisonville Elementary School, and you were a winner for one that's named after a stick of butter. Miami Lakes, isn't that what that is?
I don't know if that's true, is it?
I think it's Land O'Lakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Land O'Lakes, right.
Okay, so the Miami Lakes spelling bee champion. Okay, now what was the word you just used?
I think it's indefatigable, meaning basically it can't be denied or won't be denied, right?
A person or their efforts that are persisting tirelessly. You are correct.
There you go.
Very well done.
That's Mahomes, right? It's like, this guy again, that's him. I mean, go back to last year's Super Bowl, and I'm getting off the topic that you asked me about, but I think this is interesting. This is why he is who he is. You go back to last year's Super Bowl, I don't think he had necessarily the greatest performance, but the game gets to overtime, okay? And there were two fourth downs in overtime, if I recall correctly, and he converts them both. I mean, it's like you get on the fourth down, you're thinking, okay, like if we can get a stop here, if you're the Niners, you're like, if you can get a stop here, like this is our shot, right? And no, he finds a way. Everybody's covered, and you know what? He's like, all right, I'm going to take off.
Yeah,
here he goes with his awkward running style, and you just like want to punch him because like, I hate this guy.
He's Bowser the Dragon from Super Mario Brothers, right? I mean, every time you think you've got him and he's down, he pops back up, and you're like, are you kidding me?
Right. It's like, I hate this guy. Like, I mean, if I was an opponent,
I routinely say to myself, this guy's indefatigable. That's usually what I say to myself.
Yeah, I mean, that's a word we used around each other in just regular, conversation, right?
Yeah, only at Miami Lakes, apparently. But by the way, Steve, now tell me about that. Now listen to this. Somebody sends me this, right? Jake, don't take it too seriously when people say that you look like the guy from Hellboy. He was also in Beauty and the Beast and the Lion that talked, etc., in other roles. He just has a really weird cranium. Oh, okay. Well, I feel a lot better about things.
All right, listen, it's not that bad. Your head is just shaped funny.
I mean, what are we doing here? Like, I'm not Max Headroom for crying out loud. Stephen, I'm curious to this. Stephen Holder, our guest. I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day, and I want you to opine on this because you can give a good perspective. I was talking with someone. Well, no, you on this one you will. Okay, you do on most. I was having a conversation with someone about universities, either in a positive or a negative, who their academic reputation has become somewhat offset or misguided based on their athletic department. For example, I think there are people that think that, like, Gonzaga is Duke, like, as a university. And Gonzaga, I think, is probably like the Xavier of the Pacific. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there are people, and then there's the other side of it. Like, there are schools that are super elite schools, and people don't realize it because of the branding of their athletic department. Do you feel like, even though Miami is obviously a university that was put on the map to a lot of people based on their football program, but during the Howard Schnellenberger years of Miami, you know, the rule, the branding, as you know, was the U, right? Just like the Wild Wild West kind of, the Michael Irvin era. Do you feel like when you tell people that you went to the University of Miami, which is one of the 25 or 30 most elite institutions in America, do you feel like the academic reputation under which you studied was compromised in any way by the branding of the athletic department and representing the university?
Well, I this is what I can say. I will tell you that at any time I tell people where I went, their response is 99% of the time one that's in the context of football, 100%. And I think that answers the question to a degree, right? I mean, we were the Outlaws, right? We were the youth, you know, not the University of Miami, the research institution, right, with the best marine biology school in the country and, like, you know, a really like an elite medical school, right? Like, I mean, not that I would have ever gotten admitted, but I'm just saying, yes, that's absolutely true. There's no doubt about that. There's no question about that. It's interesting because it's funny. Like, I don't think people do that with, I don't know, say Michigan. Like, I think people think about Michigan as an elite school, elite athletic program, but I guess they've never been portrayed in the light that Miami's been portrayed. But we also did it to ourselves, right? So it's all good. I would say this: there is no doubt that athletic success does translate into higher application rates and all of that.
Look at Butler.
So
Butler's a prime example.
Yes, exactly.
Butler was able to become more
too.
selective because of the increased number of applications after they had back-to-back Final Four runs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Look, I'll tell you, man, like, you know, we would get back at Miami, we would get, even back in the day, because, you know, they've been good since the 80s, you know, they would get, like, all the top students in the Northeast whose parents had money. They're like, Mom, Dad, I want to go to Miami, you know, and they would come. So we had a lot of local kids, a lot of Florida kids, but we also had a tremendous number of, like, New England kids that matriculated. And it was probably a large percentage of the student body. And it's because why would they randomly want to go there? Other than, obviously it's in Miami, but I mean, they could have gone to lots of places in the South, right? They could have gone to the University of Florida, great school, right? But I mean, they chose Miami, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason Miami was at the forefront of their mind. A relatively small, compared to public schools, a relatively small private institution at the time when I was there, like 15,000 kids, not, you know, pretty normal size university. So anyway, I agree with that completely. There's a reason universities care about athletic success beyond just the money that it provides. It also emboldens the reputation of the university. There's no question about that.
Listen, at the University of Miami, frequently they say that the student body there is indefatigable as they are matriculating through something that is emboldening the university. And at IU, we just say they got a bunch of pesky dudes that take classes and try to keep on brand, right? It's all relative.
Well, listen, we were definitely indefatigable on Friday and Saturday nights. That I will tell you.
I'm sure. All right, lastly,
that
Stephen.
Is definitely true.
Peyton Manning had his kid at the Pro Bowl throwing the ball around. I think it might have been Zaire Franklin or somebody had shot some video of it. Did you happen to see him?
I did see his son at one point. I forget the kid's name, but
Marshall.
yeah, I did see him.
Marshall Manning.
Saw him. Marshall, that's right. I did see him at one point. Yes.
Dumb question.
What?
Did he?
Go ahead.
And I'm asking this just because it's curious, because his father is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, and he comes from the greatest quarterback royalty family of all time. but he's throwing passes to Jamar Chase seemingly from like 25 yards out, and he's putting it perfectly placed and everything else. If he was not Peyton Manning's kid, would you say to yourself, wow, that 12 or 13-year-old kid is really skilled, or is it way too early to tell?
I don't think it caught my eye to that regard or in that regard. So I think too early to tell. But man, if we get another Manning, I mean, we're about to go through a Manning period here, right? In the coming years, or next year or two at Texas. If we get another one, oh my God, that's going to be overload, isn't it?
Do you think Arch Manning will he live up to that's a lot of promise, man. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. I think the odds are against it, frankly. Not because I don't believe in the kid. I'm just saying, he's got an uncle who is a 2-time Super Bowl winner. Oh, I guess dad
that's right.
too. But my point is, he's got 4 Super Bowls in the family. Wait, did Archie win one? No.
He's got 2 uncles that each won 2. He's got a father that was allegedly the best athlete of the 3.
I said father. I meant 2 uncles, right?
Right. And he's got a grandfather that is probably the greatest disparity between perceived talent and actual hardware, right?
Yeah, for sure. So
no fault of his own.
Odds are against it, man. Odds are against it. Which has nothing to do with whether I believe in the kid. I'll just say it like that is so much to live up to. But I'm definitely going to be front and center to see it. I mean, if nothing else, think of all the NIL he's going to make. He's already.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Yeah, he's already. All right, lastly, Stephen, who wins the Super Bowl? Here's the thing on the Super Bowl. I'm telling you right now. They're going to call heads. It's going to be tails. Winning team is going to defer. But who wins the game?
I still say Chiefs. I mean, I know this is not like going out on a limb, but I can't bet against Mahomes in a situation like this. Big game. I just can't until somebody does it. But I will say this. The Eagles, they are killing it right now. Like, they are killing it. If there was ever a time somebody's going to find the antidote to Mahomes, this may be the team. They may be able to just outscore the Chiefs and outduel that Chiefs defense, which is phenomenal. But until somebody does it, I don't know. I just can't go out on a limb and say it.
It is obviously because you know how it goes. I mean, to your point, it's going to be late in the game. It's going to be relatively tight. You're going to be thinking to yourself like, oh, Philly's going to get a second one. People are going to be like climbing light poles. And then Kansas City comes down and same old song and dance, right? Same old song.
I mean, there's just too much history of it happening. We just saw it, we just saw it a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's what they do. So, and then again, last year's Super Bowl in itself, look at that, right? It's what the guy does. And again, you can hate him, you can love him, whatever, but you cannot deny, and you can think whatever you want about the refs too. That's fine, whatever. All of that, none of that undermines the fact that when the game was on the line, Patrick Mahomes on the biggest stage has been what? Indefatigable.
He has. You learn something new every day, man. And here's the thing. Do you know what the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon is?
I need a reminder. I've heard of it.
Bader-Meinhof phenomenon is that, and many of our listeners are about to experience it. When you learn or hear of something for the first time, seemingly, like a new word, like the one that Stephen just used, then all of a sudden, once it is introduced into your world, suddenly and seemingly you see it everywhere.
I believe that.
That is the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, which, by the way, if you start seeing the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon a lot now that you've heard about it, then that's actually the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Appreciate it. We'll look for you on CNN as Van Jones.
All right, see you later.
All right. Now, here's the other thing. So can you imagine stopping somebody? Here's a challenge for you folks. Stop somebody in an airport. Eddie, give me a city you'd like to be flying to.
Seattle.
Seattle, okay. So you're going to fly to Seattle, most likely, unless you're flying direct, which you can do on Alaska Airlines. But if you're not flying direct, you're going to fly through probably Denver, right? The Denver airport's kind of a crossbreed of people from all over.
Denver, Vegas, or Phoenix.
You take Denver in that regard, right? Go through that airport. And you know that airport's haunted. Did you know that?
It's a new airport.
I know it's haunted. Did you know that?
No.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole thing with the Illuminati about the Denver airport. There's all kinds of things about, like, what was that movie with the Dan Brown book? Help me out here. Tom Hanks was in it.
You're talking about Castaway?
No, the book that's all about, like trying to find hidden archaeological stuff.
No idea.
Oh, come on. Somebody help me out here. Send it to me right now. Send me a text. Text me, or you know what I'm talking about. The Dan Brown is the author of the book, the treasure.
The Lost Symbol? Oh, no.
No, the something treasure with Tom Hanks. And the Da Vinci Code. Thank you.
Oh.
The Da Vinci Code. So the Da Vinci Code, I haven't seen it, but it's all about, like, trying to solve, like, all these, like, hidden subliminal messages. And there is a huge conspiracy theory out there about the new Denver airport, that it's got all kinds of Da Vinci Code level stuff in it. And in addition to that, there's a huge Bronco horse out in front of the airport that has two red beady eyes. And when they were building that statue, it collapsed and allegedly killed one or two of the workers. And so people are like, oh, man, it's like the Denver airport has all this underground, like, weird satanic type stuff. I kid you not, people believe this stuff. But that's where I'm going to put you in terms of your layover.
Okay.
But I want you, it's just an experiment, okay, to stop just a random dude, just a guy walking along, looks like he's late to his flight to Sioux Falls, right? And you stop the guy and go, excuse me, you look familiar to me. Has anybody ever told you look like somebody from The Wizard of Oz? And when he says, oh, The Wizard of Oz, okay, so are you talking about Ray Bolger? Or the Cowardly Lion. You look like the Cowardly Lion. See what happens when you say that. See what happens. People are telling me I look like this fella from Beauty and the Beast. You know, you look like the Beauty and the Beast guy. Oh, really? The Beauty? No, the Beast. Oh, thanks. Why? Well, he's got a weird cranium. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Doesn't he end up with the princess, Jake?
Well, we know how that story worked for me. But yes, perhaps, I don't know. But either way, somebody sent me the movie poster for this, and they're like, look, you look like this guy. Now, what am I supposed to do with this?
I appreciate Jeremiah Wheatley for doing the side-by-side.
I mean, what am I supposed to do with this picture of this guy that literally looks like the Cowardly Lion? And people are telling me I look like this guy. I mean, what is this exactly? Come on. All right, I'm going to work through my therapy. You know what this guy looks like? He looks like Gary Busey. He looks like Gary Busey drugged out, but with a long wig and a lion mask on. And people think I look like him. And he's 74 years old. I'm going to go bathe myself in Kiehl's lotion and come right back. to see this artist in concert. Dispatch. And the show itself is going to be out at White River. That is the Everwise Amphitheater at White River State Park on Wednesday, June the 18th. We will do that coming up in just a couple of minutes. The only requirements is once we open up the phone lines, if you are the caller that corresponds with the number with which Eddie picks, and then you also agree that I don't look like Hellboy. Those are the only things required for you to win. By the way, interestingly enough, if you go to denver.org, they have, they're so proud of it that Denver has a massive article in their own city website telling you all of the different things that you can scout out about the alleged underground of the Denver airport and its weird connections to the occult, including the large beady-eyed Bronco out front. If you are just joining us on this Wednesday, of course, we have been on the air for an hour and a half now. You may have missed at the top what I mentioned, and we'll mention one more time here. Obviously, this show today and yesterday is slightly different than that with which you have become familiar. The name of this program is Query and Company, and my name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison is the other voice that you've heard.
Good afternoon.
And the company refers to all of you who listen to this show, both of you, actually, to which we are most appreciative. When this show came about, what I knew was that I was moving from the morning here to the midday, and they came up with the name of the show, and we had fun with it by creating a fictional company, and the president of that company was Jimmy Cook, who had, of course, worked here in a number of different capacities and avenues over the last 6 years, and is somebody who grew up in Indianapolis, went to Roncalli High School, went to IU, and worked, obviously, in producing the midday show and filling in as a host on the midday show and being a co-host on the midday show. And each capacity handled every responsibility thrown his way, not only capably but enthusiastically and very professionally, goes without saying. And, you know, Jimmy has become a part of, for Eddie and I, our everyday lives for quite some time. The company that we work for, like any company right now in the United States, and constantly, this is since the beginning of time, is always undergoing the ebbs and flows of just the economy itself and trying to always forecast the direction in which things may be headed and navigating through those changes. And oftentimes in business, and I know this all too well, I've gone through it several times myself, that means that changes have to be made from an economic standpoint, just in terms of downsize in areas. And yesterday, our company, no stranger to, unfortunately, the circumstance that many companies go through, did have some changes that took place and some layoffs that took place. Now, locally speaking, in this market, and we are grateful for this, and I think, odd as it may sound, even Jimmy can appreciate and be grateful for this. The local branch, for lack of a better phrase, of our company did undergo fewer layoffs than nationally did take place across the country. Our radio corporation that we work for also had fewer layoffs than most of the competing large conglomerates across the country in the last quarter or so, economically speaking. All of that long-winded is to simply say this, and that is that, unfortunately, Jimmy's not part of the show anymore, but he will always be part of the company, obviously. He's now president emeritus, if you will. Jimmy was a great coworker, a great teammate, and remains, to Eddie and myself, both obviously still a very good friend. He will continue doing his broadcasting for Roncalli Athletics, which is something that he takes great pride in. He obviously is a young father, and he and his wife are going to stay in the Indianapolis area. I know that she continues working and has a good job as well. So in talking to Jimmy, I know that he was disappointed to not carry on. Well, he's probably happy that he doesn't have to be around Eddie and I a lot, but disappointed to not carry on with what we do each and every day. But he was a total pro about it, and he was a total pro throughout the time that he was here. I simply want to say, for anybody listening, and make it emphatically clear that Jimmy absolutely was a valued member of this show, this station, and this company, and is thought of in the highest of regards of everybody that comes through this building. And should opportunities arise in the future, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't perhaps still be involved in some way if they present themselves. And while I know it's difficult for him to see this right now, as it often is in life, sometimes it's hard when you look through the windshield at those things in front of you to know that the windshield wipers are very soon going to make things very clear for you. And at that point, you got to put on sunglasses because the things in front of you are much brighter. And it's very difficult when you're going through that to navigate that and to understand and grasp that. But I'm pretty confident as somebody who's been around this business and been around a lot of people for a long time that absolutely is applicable to Jimmy. So we will miss him. We certainly wish him the best. And we will not call him a stranger because he will certainly still be a part of Eddie and I. And we'll see what happens moving forward from there. But I did want to offer that explanation as to why things may sound a little bit different today, and that includes, obviously, that we will not have Jimmy's plays of the day, which he did, and I appreciate, those who got on board Greenfield Signs, for example, for helping out and sponsoring Jimmy when he did those things. Eddie, you said we have tickets to give away. Have you determined what number you think would be an appropriate or applicable number for us in terms of the giveaway of callers here?
What number did we do yesterday? 3, right?
We did do number 3, yes.
So I think today.
Now, people are already calling in. Now, these are the people. Let me just, if I may, hang on just a second. Let me turn on the little thing on the side of my hip here. You ready? False start, number 74, offense. 10-yard penalty, still first down.
When did false starts become 10-yard penalties?
Is that a 5-yard penalty?
5-yard,
Sorry,
right.
yeah. Sorry. Neutral zone infraction. What's that, a 5 or 10-yard penalty?
5.
I should know this. You know how I should know this? Let me tell you something right now in terms of why you will never ever hear me specifically complain about. Now, I did say in the Buffalo game that I thought that Josh Allen got a first down and I was confused by the spotting of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of years ago, I think I've mentioned this before, and I don't know if I'm at liberty to say the name of the company. I don't think that I'm in violation, but I'll just be vague in the way I say it. NCAA officials at various levels, the NCAA officials now have to, in order to get their game each week. So if you are an official and you typically do the Missouri Valley basketball, whatever it might be, contrary to popular belief, NCAA officials are not assigned to a specific conference. You can work the MoVal on a Monday. You're like a vet. MoVal on Monday, ACC on Tuesday, Big West on Wednesday, whatever. Mountain West on Thursday. You wouldn't go that many games, but you get what I'm saying. You're not assigned specifically to any one league or hired by any one league. And if you are an NCAA official, in order to get your assignment for the week, you have to log on to an NCAA-sanctioned website for the officials. And in order to get your assignment each week, you have to watch a video, anywhere from 2 to 3 minute video, from the week before of plays that took place, both positively and plays that were called incorrectly. And with that video that each official has to watch, there is an explanation of why the call was either the right one or why the call was incorrect. And it is super, super elaborate in terms of the understanding of the nuances of what makes a correct or incorrect call for football, basketball, any of the sports. I know this because I do the voiceover work for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see the video. I just get a script, I read it, and when I read it, literally the nuance of it, and if you could hear the intricate amount of detail that goes into knowing the right or wrong call, you will say to yourself, there is no way I have no idea how they know all the rules. It is so incredible, the amount of rules, the number of rules, and everything else that goes into all of that takes place with the officials and everything they have to do. It truly is incredible. It is ironic, I guess, but to me, that I wouldn't know the difference between a 5-yard penalty and a 10-yard penalty because I have to. But the fact that those men and women are able to keep all that clear is incredible. I don't know how they do it, but it changed my perspective totally on the intricacies and the detail and the challenge of that job.
As for the number, 317-239-1070 for caller to get those tickets to go see Dispatch. Tonight is game number 2 of a 4-game West Coast road trip, so let's go with call number 2.
Number 2, as
now, do we have
Red
to
Porter
take the
used to
caller
say.
on air to prove that they think you don't look like Hellboy?
Yeah, I do want to do that, actually. Caller number 2, we got it right here. There's caller number 2 right now. We'll just do this roulette style, so they are live and on the air. Caller number 2, you are on the air. This is who?
Lucas Smith?
Lucas Smith, you said? You didn't have to give your last name, but Lucas, you said, right?
Yes.
Lucas, what line of work are you in, if you don't mind me asking? You sound like a nice fella.
I'm a sanitation manager at a bakery.
We need a
Really?
sanitizer. in
Now, hold on. There was a bakery in town that was legendary a couple of years ago that needed a sanitation worker, as I understand it, about 25 years ago. But what exactly, Lucas, if you don't mind me asking, what does a sanitation worker do? You're cleaning bagels? What are you doing?
Well, I'm a manager. I'm over the sanitation department at a large bakery in Marion.
Oh, now are you a native of Marion?
Anderson.
Oh, real big rivalry there, right? At least back in the day. How old a fella are you, Lucas? You sound like a nice guy.
42.
42. Okay, and so did you go to Anderson, Highland, or Madison Heights?
Anderson.
Okay, and did you play in the Wigwam?
I was 2 years at the Wigwam and then 2 years at the new Anderson.
Man, I'll tell you, the Wigwam was just absolutely the best. Now, did you hate Marion then growing up?
Marion, Muncie, we had a couple of big rivalries.
I'll bet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, would you agree with this? And, Lucas, no pressure here, but you got to answer no. Are you familiar with that Hellboy guy?
I know who he is, yeah.
Okay. Now, and I'm assuming you have not ever seen what I look like, right? I mean, you just listen on the radio, but
I've seen you before.
You have? Okay. And did you say to yourself, now that, and be honest, Lucas, I won't be offended. Did you say to yourself, that there's a good-looking guy?
Well, I thought that you should probably be on TV instead of radio.
I guess that's a compliment in its own right.
Now, Lucas, you do not think I look like the Hellboy guy, right?
Not at all.
Oh, yes. All right, Lucas. Well, now, do you have a significant other, Lucas? You a married fella? You got a girlfriend? Whatever it might be?
Fiance.
Fiance. Okay. And when's the big wedding?
We don't have a date set yet, but we're hoping next summer.
Okay. Now, will you invite me?
I absolutely would.
Can I just invite I'm great. Listen, I'm great at small talk. I like wedding cake, and I can usually do a decent toast. You don't need me for the toast. Now, here's the thing. One thing I know about this, Lucas, the wedding cake is going to be the cleanest that anybody's ever seen in their life, right?
I can definitely tell you that's true.
Indoor or outdoor wedding, because if it's outdoor and if you need shade, just have me come with Jake.
That's right. I love it. All right, Lucas, you're on your way to the concert. You will not be getting married on June 18th because on that Wednesday you are going to be at the amphitheater at White River, and you will be taking in the concert. We appreciate you listening to Query and Company, Lucas. Hang on the line. Eddie will get your info. We will come back and put a tie on all of it. Did I mistakenly say today's Wednesday? It's Tuesday, right?
I don't know. I tune out sometimes, if I'm being honest, because I'm back here cutting up audio for you for the podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And no offense, there are sometimes I just tune you out.
You and me both, right?
You tune me out or you tune yourself out?
Oh, I tune myself out on a regular basis. I told you I can't stand my voice, right?
But you love to look at yourself, that's for sure.
Well, like I said, it takes me an extra 30 seconds to brush my teeth just because I catch myself in the mirror. Beautiful. I have a beautiful grill, don't I? You
Sure.
know my teeth. Just so you know, the top of my teeth are slightly off center from the bottom, because when I was a kid, I had to wear. When you wear did you have braces as a kid?
No.
Okay. After you have braces, which are designed to get your teeth in alignment of one another, then you wear a headgear to straighten out the top and the bottom in alignment with one another. And I had to wear the headgear, which was the worst, by the way.
Do you have any pictures of this?
No, and I'll tell you why. I only had to
You
wear the
burned
headgear
them?
at night.
Mm.
And the very first night that I had to wear it, I had juvenile epilepsy, which we did not know until I had a grand mal seizure, and my sister saw it. She was walking past my room, and I was getting ready for bed, and I was having a seizure. And so the first thing they did was take my headgear off in worry that like I was going to, it would break or I would swallow it or whatever, to take it off. And so then I remember I had the Big Ten pennants, a pennant for all of the Big Ten schools on the wall. And I remember waking up, because when you have a seizure, you become extremely fatigued, because basically what a grand mal seizure, essentially, for lack of a better phrase, medically speaking, it's as if all of the drafts in your inbox of your brain are released at one time. And so every order for your muscles is released at once, and every muscle goes into movement simultaneously. So it's even though it only lasts, 30 to 45 seconds, if you're lucky, I guess, you become exhausted. And so I fell asleep, and my parents called 911, and I woke up to looking at the Wisconsin pennant on the wall. And the EMTs were taking me out. And I mean, in hindsight, and I'm saying this because, and I've told this story before, but if you have a young person that's gone through a seizure, or you are a young person hearing me that's gone through a seizure, juvenile epilepsy is something that eventually you outgrow. And I was at the outgrow stages of my juvenile epilepsy. I was 13 years old when actually 12 and a half years old when this happened. And then they were able to look back and go, you know what, I'll bet he had like a seizure here or there. So I'd had a few before, but I never had any since. But my mom was so worried about the headgear and about that, because it's pretty traumatizing, I never had to wear the headgear again. So as a result, my jaw alignment is still slightly off from top to bottom. But it was a heck of a way to get out of having to wear it.
Look at that crew that just walked in. They walked in on a mission.
Walked in.
Here I
along
am.
with James, you are on a mission, man. You look like somebody told me, John, that I look like Hellboy.
Hellboy?
Yeah,
Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman was the Beast in Beauty and the Beast,
correct,
too,
not
right?
a compliment, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he was Ron Perlman. What was the biker thing he was in, too? Sons of. Oh,
Yeah.
I knew you would know that, James.
He was a lead, but he's 74 years old.
Yeah, I think they just are probably referencing what they believe to be the size of your head.
I know.
For once,
My
someone's talking
cranium,
about
right?
your head and not mine.
And the problem was, I think Beauty and the Beast, Ron Perlman didn't really have to go through much of a transition makeup-wise. I
Correct.
think they just kind of
slapped
they slapped a
bronzer
little
on him and sent him
slapped
out.
some pubes on his face and went to work.
By the way, do you have the breaking news sounder, Eddie?
I do.
Yes.
Go ahead with it, Eddie.
Andrew Nimhard named Defensive Player of the Month for the Eastern Conference for the month of January.
Is that the first time he has won said award? Do you know?
Yes.
Is that the first time a Pacer player's won that since how long?
Boy, has Turner won it? I would think Turner's won it, right?
Defensive Player of the Month?
Yeah.
Has he?
I'm guessing. If I had to
Probably.
guess one that would have won it, maybe Neesmith.
I'm going to say,
Paul George?
what's longer? IU's losing streak in Wisconsin or
Brutal.
Defensive Player of the Month honors for a Pacer?
I'm going to guess IU Wisconsin, because we mentioned this earlier.
Who was on that team, by the way?
Do you know who their leading scorer was the last time Indiana won at Wisconsin? We did this earlier.
A.J. Guyton.
That was one of my guesses.
Kirk Haston.
At forward for Indiana, he's a 6'8 sophomore from Abilene, Texas. Number 45, Andre Patterson.
How about this?
I believe you had a stand-up bit about Andre Patterson, John.
Andre Patterson was in the last time they won in 98?
Yes.
He was there in 98?
Yes.
I didn't think he was on the team in 98.
He would have been you looked it up, right, Eddie? Last time they won?
It was the 97-98 team, not the 98-99.
Oh. Even better. 97, 90. Hell, I was still in Bloomington working at
The
B97.
one shining moment for Andre Patterson.
Can you guys name the starting five the last time the Pacers won in Portland with fans in the arena?
I bet I can.
They won there in 21, but that was the COVID season.
Okay,
There
what
were no
was the
fans.
year?
2007.
Oh, boy.
You want me to go to work on this for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Granger, check.
Yes.
Dunleavy,
Yes.
check. Troy Murphy,
Yes.
Tinsley,
Yes.
and shoot, 5.
Hold on. So you're missing what position are we missing here? center?
Yes.
Oh, Jeff Foster.
Bingo.
Thank
there
you
you go.
very much.
Feisty
God,
Foster, baby.
I just got a sports arousal out of that trivia question.
Yeah, that was impressive. I will admit they run together to me. Now, the guy that around then that was my favorite Pacer, that might have gotten some spot minutes on that team, but when he did, he would score big points because he didn't care about anybody but scoring. Anthony Johnson.
Yeah, he
Beetlejuice.
was. You know
I
what?
loved Anthony Johnson.
It's funny. We always thought he played hard and he was a great teammate, but everybody else said he was an awful teammate.
That's exactly correct.
People on the team go, man, that guy was a jerk. Nobody liked him.
Totally.
It was
That's
weird.
exactly correct.
Yeah.
He had a 42-point game one
He
night.
did
It
have
was
a 42. And exactly. Well, where was Eddie Gill? Which team was Eddie Gill on? Was he on that
for
team?
the Pacers?
Yeah, when Eddie Gill was a Pacer,
Well,
was he on that team?
Gil was on the Brawl team, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Right
Yeah.
before that, right?
He was
believe.
with the Pacers from 2004 to 2006.
Okay, so he missed out on that. And Monte Ellis was not there yet either, right?
Correct. He was after that. Now, Ike Diagu might have been on that team.
Ike
07.
Diagu.
He's another one. Remember,
What did you change his name to?
Boy, did he?
No, he didn't. No, that's Jeff Pendergraph.
I forgot about him. Yeah.
They were
There
both
you
from
go.
Arizona. Was one from Arizona State and one from USC?
Ike Diagu was definitely Arizona State. I think
Yeah.
Pendergraph was USC, yeah.
Yeah, both in the Pac-12 back then. What was Jeff Pendergraph's original name? The late Brian Williams?
No, that's Bison Dele.
Yeah.
Right? That was Bison
It's
Dele.
terrible.
I can't remember.
You ever see that movie Dead Calm? That's kind of the Bison. Remember the Bison Dele story?
That story
They went
was
out in the middle of the
terrible.
ocean on a boat and
It was just him, wasn't it?
was never found again. I think his brother.
He and his brother, and didn't his brother come back and he didn't?
I think his brother hip tossed him off or something like that.
that's
didn't he?
right.
Eee.
This is the kind of award-winning radio you get from John that's up next. Good to be here. By the way, John, I don't know if you saw or not, 19th in the country midday show, baby.
What was that?
Right here.
Oh,
I'm number 19,
from that guy.
baby.
Oh yeah, from the
I
world's
slid-
greatest consultant. That's what we want to hear.
I slid 8
God.
spots. How did I slide 8 spots?
Hey, can you only imagine who tabulates that? People that can't walk and chew gum and wipe at the same time. Seriously. Good God Almighty. You know what? I'm going to be rated on that tomorrow. I'm not even going to be in the top 20.
Well, they only
Can
do
you
20.
imagine some of the advice some of these guys are getting advice from that haven't worked or done this in years? That's incredible.
Now, hold on. I'm looking here to see.
Do I sound angry with that at all?
Who's
It's just
ranked,
true.
right now in college basketball, who's ranked number 19 in the country?
Number 19 in the country in college basketball.
Are we going to AP or are we going to the coaches poll?
Kansas.
Actually, Wisconsin. So I'm Wisconsin or UConn? I'm UConn, baby.
I'm not even going to be I'm going to be like Indiana State.
I'm ranked behind.
I might be UIC. Because, there's one particular dude on this board that hates my guts.
I know. Well,
Butts.
hey.
What a butt sniff.
We'll see where you turn out. All right, John's up next. We'll be back with you noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.